Good afternoon, everyone. I would like to call this meeting to order. And at this time, I acknowledge that we meet on the traditional land of Treaty 6 territory and acknowledge the diverse indigenous peoples whose ancestors' footsteps have marked this territory for centuries, such as Cree, Dene, Sotu, Blackfoot, Nakota Sioux, as well as the Métis and Inuit, and now settlers from around the world. And I will do a quick roll call. Councillor Wright,
Good afternoon.
Councillor Knack,
Good afternoon.
Councillor Principe,
Good afternoon.
Councillor Stevenson,
Good afternoon.
Councillor Paquette,
Hello.
Councillor Tang,
Hello, hello.
Councillor Hamilton,
Hello.
Councillor Rutherford,
Hello.
Councillor Salvador,
Good afternoon.
Councillor Cartmel,
Good afternoon.
Councillor Rice,
Good afternoon.
Councillor Jans. Councillor Jans,
Good afternoon.
thank you. Adoption of the agenda. Councillor Rutherford? Can I go to you for that, Councillor Rutherford?
For adoption of the agenda, so
Oh, sorry.
moved.
So go ahead, Councillor Rutherford.
Usually it's Hamilton, so
Sorry,
that's
I am so. That's what I meant, actually, Councillor.
sorry. I was just,
I am so.
I can move it.
I am so sorry. I'm so sorry.
That the
Councillor.
February 23rd City Council public hearing meeting agenda be adopted with the following changes. 3.3 Charter Bylaw 19962, to rezone land in the Davies Industrial West neighborhood, attachment 2.
Thank
Second.
you, Councillor Rutherford, and seconded by Councillor Rice.
Rice?
Yeah, got it. Any, Councillor Rice? Yeah, Councillor Rice. Any questions? Seeing none, call the vote, please.
Yes, for me, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Councillor Tang. Just looking for Councillor Jans's vote.
Yes, for me.
Thank you. We have 13 votes.
Display the votes, please. That is carried. And there are no protocol items. Are there any protocol items that I don't know of? I see none. And explanation for the public hearing process. And I will explain that the clerk will call out the bylaws to be dealt with. I will call out the names of the people registered to speak to each bylaw. Next, council members will select the bylaw. Next, council members will select the bylaws that they wish to discuss and vote on any bylaws that have not been selected for discussion. Council will then deal with each of the bylaws that were selected for discussion and debate. For each item, administration will first provide an overview of the bylaw. Members of the public who have registered to speak will then be invited to make their presentations. Those in favor will speak first in panels, followed by those opposed in panels. Each person will have 5 minutes to make comments. The clerk will run the official timer in council chamber. The timer lights on the podium will be green for the first 4 minutes, turn yellow when there is 1 minute remaining, and flash red when the 5 minutes are up. If you're participating virtually, you may wish to use a timer of your own. When you have finished your presentation, please remain available as council may have questions for you. After comments from the public, council may ask questions of city administration. After all questions of administration have concluded, I will ask council if they wish to ask any further questions to those who presented in response to new information that may have arisen during the public hearing. Thereafter, council may close the public hearing, and debate the bylaw. If you're participating virtually, please remember to mute your microphone when you are not speaking. If you're experiencing any technical difficulties, please reach out to the office of the city clerk using the contact information provided in your confirmation of registration or at cityclerk@edmonton.ca. If you are here with us in person, when it's your turn to speak, please come down to the desk at the front of the room. The clerk will direct you. Please remember that the temporary mandatory face covering bylaw 19408 is in effect. We ask that you keep your mask on at all times, including while making your remarks to City Council. You will notice that members of council and administration who are here in the chamber, we will not be taking our masks off while we are behind plexiglasses, and we will. All right, that's actually not needed. Okay, we appreciate your understanding and participation in keeping everyone safe. So that is done. Madam Clerk, can you please call the persons to speak on these bylaws?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Items 3.1 and 3.2 will be dealt with together. Is there anyone to speak to Charter Bylaw 19607 to close a portion of 125th Avenue Northwest and 62nd Street Northwest Industrial Heights, or Charter Bylaw 19608 to allow for medium industrial uses Industrial Heights?
Yes, we have Sebastian Bergeron to answer questions only, Chris Lima to answer questions only, Lee McCarwich to answer questions only, and Japinder Grewal to answer questions only. And there's no one opposed.
May we confirm that those folks are on the line?
Yes, we will make sure. So Sebastian, are you online there? Sebastian?
Yes. Good afternoon.
Chris, you there?
Yes, I am.
Lee, you there?
I am.
Japinder, are you there?
Mr. Graywell wasn't able to join us in time.
Okay, we'll wait if he's here by the time we get to that item. Okay,
Is there anyone to speak to item 3.3, Charter Bylaw 19962 to rezone land in the Davies Industrial West neighborhood?
we have Fabio Capola to answer questions only. Fabio, are you there?
Yes, good afternoon.
All right, and there's no one opposed.
Is there anyone to speak to item 3.4, Charter Bylaw 19961 to allow for low-rise multi-unit housing Secord?
We have Elise Shillington to answer questions only. Elise, are you there?
Yes, good afternoon.
And Chris Nicholas to answer questions only. Chris, are you there?
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. No one opposed.
Is there anyone to speak to item 3.5, Charter Bylaw 19954 to rezone land for residential development Keswick?
We have Elise Shillington, she's there, and Chris Nicholas, he is there as well, and no one is opposed.
Is there anyone to speak to item 3.6, Charter Bylaw 19956 to rezone land in the Walker neighborhood?
We have Fabio Capola in favor to answer questions only. He's here, and no one is opposed.
Items 3.7, 3.8, and 3.9 will be dealt with together. Is there anyone to speak to Bylaw 19958, Amendment to the Lewis Farms Area Structure Plan? Bylaw 19959, Amendment to the Rosenthal Neighborhood Structure Plan to allow for commercial uses, or Charter Bylaw 19960 to allow for a variety of low-intensity commercial, office, and service uses, and a public utility corridor, Rosenthal.
We have Sarah Sherman to answer questions only. Sarah, are you there?
Yes, I am. Hello.
Thank you. Ainsley Brown to answer questions only. Ainsley, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Thank you. Catherine Chopko Beck to answer questions only. Catherine, are you there?
Good afternoon.
PJ Pescod to answer questions only.
Good afternoon.
Thank you, and these were in favor, and no one is opposed.
Is there anyone to speak to item 3.10, Bylaw 19964, to close portions of 28 Avenue Southwest and 127th Street Southwest, Paisley Chappelle?
We have Elise Shillington, she's here. We have, she's to answer questions only, and Peter to Castles to answer questions only. Peter, are you there?
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. They were in favor, and no one is opposed.
Is there anyone to speak to item 3.11, Charter Bylaw 19966, to rezone land for residential use in the Walker neighborhood?
We have Elise Shillington to answer questions only. She's here. And we have Alexis Shieplai to answer questions only. Alexis, are you there?
I am here, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. And they are in favor, and no one is in opposition.
Is there anyone to speak to item 3.12, Charter Bylaw 19967, to rezone land in the Glen Ridding Ravine neighborhood?
We have Sarah Sherman to answer questions only. She is here. And Alex Petrosky to answer questions only. Alex, are you there?
Good afternoon.
Those are in favor, and there's no one in opposition.
Is there anyone to speak to item 3.13, Charter Bylaw 19905, to allow for institutional and community service uses Montrose?
We have no one in favor, and we have no one opposed.
Items 3.14 and 3.15 will be dealt with together. Is there anyone to speak to Bylaw 19949, Amendment to the Boyle Street Macaulay Area Redevelopment Plan, or Charter Bylaw 19950, to allow for low-intensity commercial office and service uses and limited residential related uses Boyle Street?
We have Ryan Ediak to answer questions only, and James Monteguel to answer questions only. Ryan, are you there?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
James, are you there? James, I registered a little later on, so we'll wait for him when we come to that item. And no, they're in favor, and no one is opposed.
And confirming that James is questions only as well.
Yeah, questions only, yeah.
Is there anyone to speak to item 3.16, Charter Bylaw 19963, to rezone commercial land in the Hillview neighborhood?
We have Swan Dhaliwal to answer questions only. Swan, are you there?
Yep, I'm here. Good afternoon.
Thank you. And we have no one opposed.
Is there anyone to speak to item 3.17, Charter Bylaw 19968, to allow for small-scale infill development Windsor Park?
We have Jeff Booth. Jeff, you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Chelsea Jersak. Chelsea, you there?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you.
So Chelsea is to answer questions only. Pavan Dhaliwal. Pavan, you there?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
And just want to make sure, Jeff and Pavan, are you to make a presentation or just to answer questions?
We have presentations to give, but only if the item is selected for debate.
Okay, got it. And Bonnie Moon. Bonnie, you there? Oh, there you are, Bonnie. Thank Bonnie is joining us in person. And Jeff Collier. John Collier.
Yeah.
John, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you, John. And no one is opposed.
Is there anyone to speak to item 3.18, Charter Bylaw 19127, to rezone the West Edmonton Mall site to allow for additional signage opportunities?
We have Michael Wire to answer questions only. And Yolanda Liu. I don't know if Yolanda, you to make a presentation or questions only.
I am happy to make a presentation should council wish, otherwise questions only.
All right, thank you so much. And no one is opposed. All right, so those are the members of the public on those bylaws speaking. Now we go into exemptions to selection of the bylaws. So I will ask council members to sign up to select bylaws they wish to debate. Councillor Jans.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to select 3.18. And just as a maybe a point of order or point of process, since am I correct in understanding no one is opposed to 3.17? And I guess my question is, if no one is opposed, is it automatically selected or is it required to be selected because there are speakers?
So my understanding, maybe I'll ask our lawyer to explain that.
I'd be happy to help. So even if you have members of the public registered in favor and not for questions, then you should still select to hear from those. And I think, Mr. Mayor, it's probably Ms. Moon that you'd have to check on that with, and Mr. Collier. They were registered to speak. So 317, if I have it right, would need to be selected as well.
Yeah, 317, my understanding is that yes, they did not mention that they will only make presentation if the bylaw was selected.
Okay, yeah, sorry, I wasn't sure if I heard they were just here for questions or not. If you can confirm with them, or if it's necessary, I would select 3.17 as well.
So you want me to confirm that again, Madam Clerk?
May we confirm, Bonnie Moon, are you here to make a presentation or answer questions only?
Are you in favor or are you against? Favor, okay, got it. Okay, so you have to make a presentation. Okay, good. Then needs to be selected.
So move then, Mr. Chair, 3.17 and 3.18.
Thank you, Councillor Jans. Councillor Rice?
May I select 6.16?
I'm sorry, Councillor Rice, can you say that again?
6.16.
Confirming it's 3.16
Three
Charter
point with
Bylaw
the
in Hillview?
bylaw 19963? Councillor, that's 3.16, right, Councillor Rice? Councillor, you're on mute. Can you unmute yourself, Councillor Rice?
Yes, 3.16.
Got it. Thank you, Councillor Rice. Councillor Tang?
Yes, hi, 3.6, please. I just have a small question.
3.6. Thank you, Councillor Tang. Any more selections? I see none. All right, so we have 3.6 selected. We have 3.16 selected. And we have 3.17 selected and 3.18 selected. And I'll go to Councillor Cartmel to move the rest of the bylaws. Oh, sorry, Councillor Knack, you have
Councillor Cartmel stepped away, so I thought I could fill in the gap and
okay, please, go ahead.
do that.
Thank you.
I'll move
Knack.
first reading of items 3.1 through 3.5, and then 3.7 through 3.15.
Confirming you're moving closure of the public hearing first?
Closure of the public hearing, yes.
Closure of the public hearing. Seconded by?
Second.
By Councillor
Wright.
Councillor Wright. Moved by Councillor Knack, seconded by Councillor Wright for the closure of the public hearing on those bylaws. Any questions? Call the vote, please.
Just looking for Councillor Jans's vote.
Councillor Jans?
Sorry, in favor.
Thank you. We have 12 votes.
Display the votes, please. That is carried.
Mr.
Councillor
Mayor, I'll
Knack.
move first reading of the omnibus previously mentioned bylaws.
Second.
Moved by Councillor Knack, second by Councillor Wright. Any questions? Close, call the vote, please.
Just looking for Councillor Jans's vote.
Councillor Jans,
In favor.
Thank you. We have 12 votes.
display the votes, please. That is carried.
Mr. Mayor, I'll move second reading of the omnibus.
Thank you, and second by Councillor Wright.
Second.
Any questions? Call the vote, please.
We have all the votes.
Display the votes, please. Got everyone?
Yep, it's up there.
This, it's carried. Okay, thank you so much.
Mr. Mayor, I'll move consideration of third reading on the omnibus bylaws.
Second.
Thank you, Councillor Knack, and second by Councillor Wright. Any questions? Call the vote, please.
We have all the votes.
Display the votes, please. That is carried. Councillor Knack.
And Mr. Mayor, I will move third and final reading of Charter Bylaw 19607, Charter Bylaw 19608, Charter Bylaw 19962, Charter Bylaw 19961, Charter Bylaw 19954, Bylaw 19958, Bylaw 19959, Charter Bylaw 19960, Bylaw 19964, Charter Bylaw 19966, Charter Bylaw 19967, Charter Bylaw 19905, Bylaw 19949, and Charter Bylaw 19950.
Second.
Thank you, Councillor Knack, and second by Councillor Wright. Any questions? Call the vote, please.
We have all the votes.
Display the votes, please. That is carried. Okay. Thank you, Councillor Knack, and thank you, Councillor Wright. Okay, so our first bylaw to be discussed is 3.6 Charter Bylaw 19956 to rezone land in the Walker neighborhood. It was selected by Councillor Tang, and I'll go to administration for our presentation.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Considering that there's a short question by council, do we require the full presentation, or do you just want to go straight to questions?
I'll ask that to Councillor Tang. Another Councillor. Councillor Tang, you need a presentation?
Yeah, happy to go straight to questions.
Okay, good. So go through the presentation. Sorry, you need a presentation, Councillor Tang?
No, it's okay. I think I can go straight to questions if you want. If you want me to ring in.
And we're good to go directly to questions? Yeah, good. All right, Councillor Tang, go ahead.
Yeah, I was wondering if administration can just expand on the community insight. I was a little bit, I think it was on that piece that I kind of just paused around people's concern and feeling of misinformed by the various parties about future development plans of the neighborhood. I mean, this is a developing neighborhood and still lots of undeveloped land. And, I'm in support of this, especially given that you're adding amenities that, will contribute towards the city plan, et cetera. But I was wondering how, what because this is the first time I feel like this has come up as a public feedback, and I was wondering if you can talk about ways to maybe mitigate that. And maybe this is kind of beyond the scope of this for this purpose. But that was just the one thing that kind of raised my interest.
Thank you, Councillor. It's actually it's not common, but it's neither uncommon for people to rely on third parties for advice around what's happening in their neighborhood instead of coming to the authoritative source as the City of Edmonton. In this case, the emails and letters we received, some of them commented that the residents were told by their builder that that area would be park, or that it would always be there, and things of that like, instead of coming to the, as I said, we always encourage people to come to the city as the planning authority for the official word about what's going on in their neighborhood, but that doesn't always happen.
Yeah, and
Councillor-
oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, just to add to that, administration and we at large work with the development industry, including builders, to ensure that the proper information is provided. We seek to have the NSPs or the various planning documents provided in their sales rooms or their showrooms to ensure that there is a consistent understanding of what is to be expected and what is likely going to be developed in the future. As you said, these are developing neighborhoods, and it's sometimes hard to tell what's going to be next door when it's just a patch of either hayfield or whatnot when they're buying it.
Yeah, and do we normally like, and I think part of that is true, that part of, you know, the rezoning will keep the natural area and the park space. But I was wondering, do we normally have like signage up? So for people just walking about their neighborhood, that's just another reminder that this is not going to remain undeveloped?
Councillor, we do, when there's an application to rezone land, if it complies with the plan, there's not a requirement to put a sign on the site. If there is an application to also change the plan from what City Council has approved, we then require that to be posted on a sign on the site so that people passing by the site, people who may not be within the direct mailing radius, but who may pass by the site regularly, will also be aware of someone has made an application to change the plan for the neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
But in this case, the application conforms completely with the plan. So it's our practice to not go take that extra step in that case.
Yeah, no, I understand. I understand that. I think it would just be helpful, I think, just down the road for other kinds of proactive measures to, I guess, mitigate some of these concerns. But anyways, thank you for your responses. I am satisfied, and I'm happy to close the public hearing on this and move to approve.
Thank you, Councillor Tang. So we have Fabio Coppola to answer questions only, and that is not the case. There's no questions to him, and I would go back to administration again for any new information arising. There's none new information arising, so we can move forward on the closing of the bylaw on this. Yeah.
May you call for clarifying questions of councillors to either the proponent or administration, either or.
So yeah, okay. So we have to go through that process, right? Okay. So council members, any clarifying questions to members of the public on a new information? Seeing none. Councillor Tang, would you like to move the closing of the bylaw, public hearing on this bylaw?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I move to that the public hearing on Charter Bylaw 19956 be closed.
Need a seconder?
Second.
Second by Councillor Wright. Any questions? Call the vote, please.
I'm a yes. There's a weird window coming up at my end.
Thank you, Councillor Cartmel. We have 13 votes.
Display the votes, please. That is carried.
Mr. Mayor, I move the first reading of Charter Bylaw 19956.
Second.
Moved by Councillor Tang, second by Councillor Wright. Any questions? Seeing none, call the vote, please.
We have 13 votes.
Display the votes, please. That is carried.
Mr. Mayor, I move the second reading of Charter Bylaw 19956.
Thank you, Councillor Tang.
Second.
Seconded by Councillor Wright. Any questions? Seeing none, call the vote, please.
We have 13 votes.
Display the votes, please. That is carried.
Mr. Mayor, I call for the consideration of third reading for Charter Bylaw 19956.
Second.
Thank you, Councillor Tang. Second by Councillor Wright. Any questions? Seeing none, call the vote, please.
Just looking for Councillor, we have 13 votes.
Display the votes, please. That is carried.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I call for the third and final reading of Charter Bylaw 19956.
Second.
Moved by Councillor Tang, second by Councillor Wright. Any questions? Seeing none, call the vote, please.
We have 13 votes.
Display the votes, please. That is carried. Thank you, Councillor Tang, and thank you, Councillor Wright. Now we are going into our next item, which is 3.16 Charter Bylaw 19963 to rezone commercial land in the Hillview neighborhood. This was selected by Councillor Rice. I'll ask administration if they have a presentation, or if not, then I'll ask Councillor Rice if she needs a presentation. Administration?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, we have a presentation available if it is council's wish to hear it, or we can go directly to questions if desired as well.
Good. Councillor Rice, do you wish to have a presentation?
Yes, please. I only saw 4 slides.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, administration, please.
Very good. Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor and members of council. Item 316 pertains to the rezoning of land in the Hillview neighborhood in southeast Edmonton. Slide 1 shows the subject site with respect to the proposed zoning, as well as the surrounding zoning and land use. The application proposes to rezone the subject site from DC2, Site-Specific Development Control, to DC2 for the purpose of adding cannabis retail sales to the existing list of uses allowed on the site. The current regulations for the site allow a limited range of commercial uses. The site is located at the southeast corner of 2 collector roadways and currently functions as a neighborhood convenience commercial store and gas bar. The site is surrounded by a variety of low and medium density housing on all sides, on land zoned RF1, single detached residential zone, RF4, semi-detached residential zone, RF5, row housing zone, and RA7, low-rise apartment zone. The subject site is buffered from the surrounding housing by the collector roadways and from the easterly adjacent lands by a 30-meter wide pipeline corridor. Slide 2 shows the subject lands in the context of the separation distances from sensitive land uses as required by the zoning bylaw. The site is located outside of the illustrated buffers and thereby complies with the zoning bylaw. The proposed change also complies with the city plan by providing small-scale commercial uses in a neighborhood setting and contributing to the provision of 15-minute districts. Next slide, please. With regard to public engagement, the applicant sent a pre-application notice to 76 surrounding landowners in September, and administration sent the same number of notices to surrounding landowners in December. An open house was not held. The applicant received 3 responses to their notice, 1 in support and 2 expressing concern. The city received 1 response expressing concern to their notice. In total, the concerns involved the site's proximity to schools and a daycare, as well as a perceived increase in crime and vandalism. Administration supports this application as it complies with the requirements of the zoning bylaw and contributes to the objectives of the city plan. This concludes my presentation.
Thank you so much for your presentation, and I'll go to council members for questions. And Councillor Rice, you selected this, so I'll go to you first.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So my question, just for the process, my question is to administration right now or to the speaker. I noticed we have 1 speaker just for answer question only, right?
Yep.
My question, I have 3 questions. So the first question is about how we address the concern and from response and from residents and regarding near to daycare and the school.
Thank you, Councillor. As we mentioned in the presentation, the site falls outside of the separation distance from schools and parks, and therefore there is no non-compliance with regard to the location. It's deemed to be an appropriate location for cannabis use by the virtue of Section 70 of the zoning bylaw. And when it comes to daycares, when the original legislation and regulations for cannabis were adopted into the zoning bylaw in 2018, a very large consultative exercise was done, and the process did involve the identification of sensitive uses, and daycares were not deemed to be a sensitive use with regard to cannabis retail sales by virtue of the fact that the children and the patrons of a daycare are of such an age that they are escorted in and out of the building and are not roaming free in the neighborhood and would not be accidentally exposed to cannabis retail sales outlets in their proximity.
Thank you for your answer. I believe this is not our council the first time to hear the concern from our residents and regarding the separation distance and for daycare. So I'm looking forward the opportunity and we can revisit that, and then already the inquires and regarding the separation distance for the daycares. Thank you for that question. And then second question, is there any a larger seminar store in that corner commercial area?
No, Councillor, I do not believe there are any other cannabis stores in that area, in that region. The buffers that were shown on slide number 2 are largely representative of separation distances from parks and schools.
Okay, thank you. The third question is, what's the population in this neighborhood, specifically the population with the age from like 1 to 19?
Sorry, Councillor, I do not have that information available at my fingertips.
So
we can provide that to you offline.
Okay, so that is my 3 questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rice. And I see no more questions to the administration from any other council members. And I will ask again if ask council if they wish to ask any further questions on those who presented this. No one presented to this, but if there is any further question arising out of new information. I see none, Madam Clerk, so we can move toward closing the public hearing on this bylaw.
Correct.
Okay. Would someone move the closing of the public hearing on bylaw 19963?
I will move to close the public hearing on Charter Bylaw 19963.
Councillor Tang, seconded by
Second.
Councillor Salvador. Any questions? Seeing none, please call the vote.
We have all the votes.
Display the votes, please. That is carried. Councillor Tang,
Mr. Mayor, I move for the first reading of Charter Bylaw 19963.
Second.
second by Councillor Salvador. Any questions? Seeing none, call the vote, please.
We have all the votes.
Display the votes, please. That is carried.
Mr. Mayor, I move the second reading of Charter Bylaw 19963.
Second.
Moved by Councillor Tang, second by Councillor Salvador. Any questions? Seeing none, call the vote, please.
We have all the votes.
Display the votes, please. That is carried.
Mr. Mayor, I move for the consideration of third reading for Charter Bylaw 19963.
Second.
Moved by Councillor Tang, second by Councillor Salvador. This is to consider giving third reading in one sitting. Any questions? Seeing none, call the vote, please.
We have all the votes.
Display the votes, please. Consideration is given.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move for the third reading of Charter Bylaw 19963.
Second.
Moved by Councillor Tang, seconded by Councillor Salvador for third and final reading. Any questions? Seeing none, call the vote, please.
We have all the votes.
Display the votes, please. That is carried. Thank you so much, Councillor Tang and Salvador. Okay, now we are going into our next item, which is 3.17, Charter Bylaw 19968 to allow for small-scale infill development, Windsor Park. This was selected by Councillor Jans, and I will ask administration if they have a presentation.
We do have a presentation, Mr. Mayor.
Please go ahead.
Good afternoon. This application is to rezone a site in the Windsor Park neighborhood from RF1 single detached residential zone to an RF3 or small scale infill development zone within the mature neighborhood overlay. The purpose of the RF3 zone is to allow for a mix of small scale housing such as single detached housing, semi-detached housing, and multi-unit housing. The stated intent of the applicant is to pursue the development of multi-unit housing. Next slide, please. The site is well situated for an increase in density. It is located on a corner lot at the eastern edge of the neighborhood at the intersection of 116th Street and 89th Avenue. The site is well connected to the broader community through its proximity to alternative modes of transportation, which include bus service along 87th Avenue and bike lanes along 89th Avenue and 116th Street. Though not shown on this slide, both the University and Health Sciences LRT stations are within 600 meters of this site. Next slide, please. The images on this slide compare the maximum potential build-out of the existing and proposed zones. The proposed RF3 zone represents an increase in allowable density among other minor differences. The RF3 zone and its permitted development is considered to be sensitive intensification because the built form is limited to the same height as the RF1 zone, and the interior setback is increased from 1.2 meters to 3 meters. Next slide, please. The proposed rezoning aligns with the goals and policies of the city plan, which encourages increased density at a variety of scales and designs. The application helps to achieve the goal of 50% of new units added through infill citywide. The city plan identifies the University Garneau area as a major node, which are intended to capitalize on excellent transit access and support higher density development and a wide mixture of land uses. The proposed rezoning supports the direction by enabling additional residential infill that would contribute to a wider variety of housing options in the area that have convenient access to alternative modes of transportation. Next slide, please. In summary, administration recommends support for this application as it provides the opportunity for increased density and housing choice in the Windsor Park neighborhood, is located on a corner lot where row housing is an appropriate and compatible form of development, and is within walking distance to a variety of alternative modes of transportation such as LRT, transit, and bike lanes. This concludes my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that. I really appreciate. We have members of public to speak in favor of this application, and I'll check again. Jeff Booth, were you to make a presentation or questions only?
I have a presentation if council would like me to give it, but I'm happy to just go to questions.
No, you can. No, you can. I just check. Chelsea Jersek to answer questions only, right, Chelsea?
Yes, that's correct.
And Pawan Dhaliwal for questions or for presentation?
Questions.
Questions only. Bonnie Moon, I understand she's for a presentation. And John Collier for questions or presentation?
I have a short presentation.
Okay, so we have Jeff, Bonnie, and John. We panel them, right, Madam Clerk?
Correct.
Yeah, so Bonnie, where'd she go? Oh, there she is. So she's already paneled. Good, thank you so much for that. Okay, we'll go to Jeff first.
Good afternoon.
As I mentioned, I'm...
So just hold, I will come to you later on, Bonnie. We'll go to, in an order of the people have registered, so I'll come to you third, sorry. Right, so, okay. Jeff Booth, go ahead.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor and members of council. My name is Jeff Booth from Situate, and I'm speaking this afternoon about New Era Luxury Homes' application to rezone their property in Windsor Park from its current RF1 zoning to the RF3 zone. Next slide, please. The site in question consists of one lot forming a corner site on 89th Avenue, just west of 116th Street. The lot has a width of over 18 meters and an area of about 835 meters squared. There's currently one single detached house on the lot. Next slide, please. Situate submitted this rezoning application on October 29th, 2021, at which time we created a web page to provide our contact information, post updates about the application, and to answer commonly asked questions. We also reached out to the Windsor Park Community League in November and February to notify them about the application and public hearing date. The Community League has provided a letter in support of the application. Next slide, please. In November of 2021, Situate also mailed an information letter to 18 nearby homes to let the neighbors know about the project, let them know about the webpage, and again to provide our contact information. We heard from one neighbor who had questions about the building size and setbacks, building design, and whether the units would be rented or sold. Next slide. So the land development process is a multi-step process that gets increasingly detailed at each consecutive step. Because this application is to rezone us to a standard zone, the design of the future building is still at an early stage and will be finalized during the subsequent development permit process. What I'm showing on this slide here is what the maximum building footprint would be under the RF3 zone. The zone requires significant setbacks from each property line for multi-unit housing, including a minimum 3-meter setback from the abutting property to the south. The maximum height would be 8.9 meters, or about 2.5 stories, which is the same as what it is under the current RF1 zone. Next slide, please. In terms of its location in the neighborhood, on this slide you can see that the site is 1 block north of 87th Avenue, close to a number of nearby services and amenities. The surrounding land use is predominantly low-density residential with some low-rise apartments, small-scale commercial, and student housing along 87th Ave. The site's about a block from bus stops, and the University and Health Sciences LRT stations are both approximately 600 meters from the site. The University campus is located directly east of the site across 116th Street, and there are a number of mid-rise buildings on campus to the northeast of the site. There's also a future mixed-use building with a maximum height of 34 meters expected to be built nearby at 8709 118th Street. Next slide, please. The site's also located within one of the major nodes identified in City Plan, University Garneau. City Plan encourages development in major nodes in the form of mid and high-rise buildings. So this proposed rezoning will be smaller in scale than what the City Plan calls for in this node, but because the site's not in the center of the node or on a major roadway, we have not applied for a larger scale zone. Next slide. Another reason why we're requesting your support here today is to help increase housing diversity and choice in the neighborhood. The proposed rezoning will add to the housing diversity of Windsor Park by enabling the development of small-scale multi-unit housing, which there's very little of in the neighborhood. Next slide. So to wrap up, I would like to respectfully ask for Council's support of Administration's recommendation today on this application, which will enable a modest, appropriately scaled development located within a major node and close to transit. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for your presentation. Next, we'll go to Pavan Dhaliwal.
Good afternoon. Hello, Mayor and Councillors. My name is Bhavan Dhaliwal, and I'm the owner of New Era Luxury Homes and the developer for the site being considered for rezoning today. Thank you so much for taking the time to hear my presentation and consider this application. Next slide. To give you a bit of background of my company, New Era Luxury Homes is a boutique builder. We're a family-owned and operated business with over 60 years of combined construction experience. We build homes throughout Edmonton in both greenfield areas and mature neighborhoods like Bonnie Doon, Garneau, King Edward Park, and Hazeldean. We build to the highest standard of workmanship, just as we would for our family, friends, and neighbors. New Era Luxury Homes is accredited by the Better Business Bureau. We are members in good standing with Canadian Home Builders Association and Progressive Home Warranty. Next slide. New Era has developed a number of homes in Edmonton, some of which you can see on this slide, of 2 homes in Hazeldean. Next slide. This next slide shows semi-detached housing developments in Bonnie Doon and King Edward Park. For the site being considered for rezoning today in Windsor Park, I really want to build something that's beautifully designed and contributes aesthetically to the neighborhood. Next slide. The site is in a great location to build new homes. The neighborhood has many great amenities like nearby park space, commercial space on 87 Ave, the University of Alberta across the street, and 2 nearby LRT stations. Adding more housing to the neighborhood will allow more people to make use of these amenities and support the school and small businesses in the area. Next slide. I'm also excited about the city plan and the opportunities that it has created to bring more types of housing to our city's neighborhoods. We want to be a part of making that happen. City plan's direction was a big factor in my decision to rezone this site. I'm excited to have an opportunity to build thoughtfully in the community, providing more new homes in a great neighborhood. Next slide. To wrap things up, I'd like to say I'm really happy to be here today, and I'm really hopeful with your support we can build something special on this site. Our company wants to support the goals of the city plan by contributing to the vibrancy of the neighborhood and making use of our investments in transit. I won't take up any more of your time. Thank you so much for listening. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you so much, and also thank you for being here. I'll go next to Bonnie Moon. Bonnie is in the Chamber Hall. Bonnie, go ahead.
As I said earlier, I'm speaking on behalf of Elaine
So Bonnie,
Soles.
is your mic on?
I've pushed the button.
So if you could just move a little bit closer to the mic so we can all hear you, people who are participating virtually as well. So if you could move a little bit close to the mic.
How's it?
That's much better. Thank you.
Very good.
Yeah.
As I mentioned earlier, I'm speaking on behalf of Elaine Soles, who should have filed a paper authorizing me to speak on her behalf because she couldn't be here. So I'm reading her words verbatim. My name is Elaine Soles. I am an affected party speaking in support of this rezoning application in Windsor Park. This proposal would rezone the property at 11603 89th Avenue from RF1 to RF3 for the purpose of developing a corner row house project. My husband and I purchased a renovated older bungalow within the notification area of this property exactly 2 years ago in February 2020. It is our aging in place home. We intend to downsize and move into this house in a few years when we want to be closer to the LRT and no longer want to live in a large 2-story house. Since purchasing the property, we've developed a secondary suite in the basement and installed solar panels on the new garage that was built by a previous owner. It's currently a rental property, providing affordable housing for 2 households. We welcome a corner row house development near our property. Our view is that this is a form of gentle densification that will fit well into the neighborhood. It will be similar in size to a single-family home, because the height and setbacks for this type of development are similar to the regulations for a single detached house. At the same time, it will increase the number of housing units on the property and increase housing choices in the neighborhood. It's our understanding the new zoning bylaw will contain a single low-density residential zone. Once it's in place, a row house development such as the one proposed will be permitted on a corner lot without rezoning the property. Thank you for considering our perspective on this proposal. We look forward to your decision to approve this RF3 rezoning application. Thank you, Mayor and Councillors.
Thank you so much for that, and thank you so much for waiting as well and coming to join us here. Okay, I'll go to council members for questions. Just one. Hold on.
We still have a Mr. Collier to present, I believe.
I thought it was. I took it. I thought it was questions only. Sorry about that. Sorry, Mr. Collier, you're next.
Thank you, Mayor and Councillors, for the opportunity to speak in support of this rezoning bylaw. I'm John Collier and a member of the Windsor Park Development Committee and here today representing the Windsor Park Community League. The Windsor Park University Health Sciences area has expensive RF1 houses and stack of student housing. There's nothing in between for young families starting out in the many education, healthcare, and support opportunities in the area. Most developers have concentrated on making skinnies, which help a little bit with density, but not a lot with affordability. The few other developers have all wanted to put up multi-story buildings, which do not attract young families, and the neighborhood fears will become yet more student housing. After many years of speaking before council asking for affordable family housing, we are delighted to support this rezoning. This will allow the construction of a small multi-unit development that is perfectly situated with regard to employment, transit, parks, and schools. We hope this is the first of more such projects and that the proposed changes to the zoning bylaw will make these types of projects much easier to develop in the future. Thanks again for your time. We ask that you please support this rezoning.
Thank you so much for your presentation. I would humbly request members who are in the chamber hall, excuse me, folks in the chamber hall, if you could please keep your conversations to yourself, and we would appreciate that. There's some disturbance coming this way, so appreciate that. Thank you so much. Yeah. Okay. All right, members of council. Any questions to the members of the public? Councillor Jans.
Thank you to Ms. Solis, through you, Ms. Moon, and to Mr. Collier for coming out to share today. On Saturday, I did a community league walk through Windsor Park. We were at this exact site and talking to the neighbor across the street who did write in a letter of concern. We did a site visit. We talked about the density coming to the neighborhood. We talked about the need to acquire new families and how the proximity to the LRT and the many other university amenities were welcomed. I guess my question would be to any of the speakers: is there value in is this the preferred outcome for the site, or is there value in waiting longer and seeing maybe more multi-unit housing through adjacent properties or something else? I'd just be interested because I see the support for this proposal, but again, it's a very small step towards new families in the neighborhood, as opposed to maybe working with other properties up and down the street.
If I may be able to speak, we do have other areas where there are contiguous lots that may be coming available for redevelopment. I believe in this area that the houses immediately adjacent to it are owned and stably owned and would not be coming up for sale in the immediate future. So in our opinion, would be to go ahead with this rezoning at this time.
And Mr. Mayor, I have no further questions. I'm happy to speak when if needed.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Jans. And I see no more questions to members of the public, and I will ask that if council, if they wish to ask any further questions to those who presented in the response to new information.
May we ask questions of administration before we do clarifying questions?
Okay, are there any questions to admin? Council members, any questions to administration? I see none. And now, the council, if they wish to ask any further questions to those who presented in response to new information that may have arisen during the public hearing. Council members, seeing none, would someone move the closing of the public hearing on this bylaw?
So moved.
Councillor Jans.
Second.
Second by Councillor Salvador. Motion is on the floor to close the public hearing. Any questions? Call the vote, please.
We have all the votes.
Display the votes, please. That is carried. Would someone move the first reading? Anyone?
So moved.
Councillor Jans.
Second.
second by Councillor Salvador. Motion is on the floor, and any question I see, Councillor Stevenson. Councillor
Thank you, Mr.
Stevenson.
Mayor. I just wanted to speak very briefly to this, just to say thank you for the community members for coming out to speak in support today. It takes time to come out and share your support, so really appreciate you taking part. I agree that this is a great opportunity to add more housing diversity into the neighborhood. Look forward to supporting it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stevenson. I see no one else on the list to speak. Call the vote, please.
We have all the votes.
Display the vote, please. That is carried. Councillor Jans.
So moved.
Second.
It's moved by Councillor Jans and seconded by Councillor Salvador. All right, any questions? Seeing none, please call the vote.
We have all the votes.
Display the votes, please. That is carried. Councillor Jans.
I think Councillor Tang had her hand up. No? Oh, okay. So moved.
That is for the consideration for third reading. It's been moved and seconded by Councillor Salvador. This is for consideration. Any questions? Seeing none, call the vote, please. Display the votes, please. That is carried. Councillor Jans.
So moved.
May you read the title
Charter
of the
bylaw.
bylaw?
Can you read it? So Charter bylaw
That charter bylaw 19968 be read a third time.
Second.
Second by Councillor Salvador. Any questions? Seeing none, call the vote, please.
We have all the votes.
Display the votes, please. That is carried. All right. Now we are going into our last item on the agenda, which is 3.18 Charter Bylaw 19127 to rezone the West Edmonton Mall site to allow for additional signage opportunities. This was exempted by Councillor Jans. So Councillor Jans, do you need administration, do you have a presentation?
Yes, Mayor Sohi, we have one if required.
Councillor
Yes,
Jans,
please.
you need a presentation?
Yes, please.
Okay, good. So Councillor Administration, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. This application proposed to amend the DC2 site-specific development control provision for West Edmonton Mall to allow for greater control over the scale, location, and types of signage on the site. The intent of the application is to replace the current sign regulations to include increased opportunities for newer sign types, such as digital signs, and to allow for a limited number of larger format signs. This rezoning recognizes the magnitude of the large 49-hectare site and its unique context in Edmonton. Development of the mall has been guided by a direct control provision since its initial build in 1981. While a number of amendments to the DC have taken place over the years, the sign regulations have been left largely untouched. And to date, the mall has relied on regulations found in the zoning bylaw, which administration recognizes are not entirely suitable when addressing a site of this magnitude. Next slide, please. The amendment is specific to the signs found on the site, and the application is driven by the owner's intent to add additional signage opportunities to the site, such as digital signage, off-premise advertising opportunities, and an increase to the maximum permitted sign size. These additional permissions will add to the visual identity of West Edmonton Mall and strengthen the site as the core development within the West Edmonton Mall Misericordia major node identified in city plan. Next slide, please. Specific regulations that balance the development of large digital signs and compatibility with surrounding communities are included, such as a maximum number of freestanding signs, maximum heights of the signs, and the directions they face at the four corners of the mall. Next slide, please. Additional regulations for digital signs have been included that require an orientation of the signs that they're not directed onto adjacent residential areas, a minimum separation distance between each sign, limiting the amount of each sign that could be used for digital signage, setbacks where required to ensure safe operation of intersections and traffic signals, and the regulations of the hours of operation. Next slide, please. For engagement, an engaged Edmonton website was prepared, and the administration also attended a meeting hosted by the Community League to discuss this proposal. This was attended by approximately 40 residents. While discussion was primarily about the LRT and transit, concerns were focused on the brightness of these digital signs and their proximity to residential areas. And these have been addressed as part of the DC2 provisions before us today. So in conclusion, administration recommends that this bylaw be approved as it supports the ongoing development of the mall. It allows for signage opportunities, including digital signs that are in scale with the unique characteristics of the site, and requires specific regulation to mitigate impacts on surrounding residential communities. Thank you. That's my presentation.
Thank you so much for your presentation. Now we will go to the members of the public. There's one person, there are two people registered, Michael Wire to answer questions only, and Yolanda Liu for presentation. So I'll go to Yolanda for a presentation.
Okay. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, members of council. My name is Yolanda Liu from Stantec, and I'm here today on behalf of West Edmonton Mall to rezone the mall from DC2 to DC2. Next slide, please. The proposed rezoning site is approximately 44 hectares in size and located in the Summerlea neighborhood, south of 90th Avenue, west of 170th Street, north of 87th Avenue, and east of 178th Street. North of the lands, separated by 90th Avenue, is a large commercial area until approximately 176th Street, where residential is located on the other side of the road with a landscape berm and fence. To the east is 170th Street with a mix of residential and the Misericordia Community Hospital, all located approximately 75 to 180 meters away from property line to property line. To the south is the Thorncliffe neighborhood with residential uses separated from the mall and the future LRT by 87th Avenue, landscaping, and fencing. To the west is the neighborhood of Belmead Gardens. The mall is separated from residential uses by 178th Street, as well as a berm and fence. Next slide, please. Public engagement has been an important component to the process, with additional engagement completed over and above city requirements. A pre-notification letter was sent to landowners prior to submission. There was a public meeting, communication and outreach via email to all surrounding community leagues, as well as meetings with both the Summerlea and Thorncliffe community leagues. In addition, the city also completed engagement through their Engage Edmonton site. As a result of the engagement, adjustments have been made to the zoning to restrict when digital signage can be in operation. Next slide, please. West Edmonton Mall is currently zoned as DC2. Adjustments to the existing zone result in a rezoning to a new DC2. The proposed changes to the zoning are to the signage regulations only. There are no changes proposed to any other regulations within the DC2 or to the general intent of the DC2, which is to allow for a large multi-use and multi-purpose shopping and entertainment facility. Next slide, please. The proposed changes to the signage regulations include the requirement for a comprehensive sign design plan to ensure all signs are consistent as the development permits are approved, definitions added for clarity, updates the maximum permitted height for freestanding signs to 12 meters on the northeast and southeast corners of the site and 11 meters for all others, allows for fascia signs on the parkades, which separate the mall building from the adjacent roadways. However, no digital signs are permitted on the parkades. Allows for a larger digital sign to be located on the roller coaster wall, which at the closest point is approximately 375 meters or over 1,200 feet from the nearest residential building. One digital sign on the northeast corner and one digital sign on the southeast corner of the site along 170th Street is permitted to have a maximum digital content area of 32 meters squared. The signs must be oriented 90 degrees to 170th Street and follow all transportation requirements to ensure no direct light on adjacent residential and hospital uses, as well as reduce distractions to drivers. The application also includes restrictions on digital signs and the times they can operate. Next slide, please. As part of the engagement process, restrictions have been placed on the times that digital signs can operate along the roads as identified in red in the figure. From November 1st to March 1st, signs must be de-energized from 12 a.m. to 5 a.m., provide static images only during the times of 5 a.m. to 8 a.m. Regular digital content can run from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., and from 8 p.m. to 12 a.m., only static images can run. From March 1st to October 31st, signs must also be de-energized from 12 a.m. to 5 a.m., provide static images from 5 a.m. to 7 a.m. Regular digital content can run from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m., and from 10 p.m. to 12 a.m., only static images can run. All other requirements in regards to intensity, brightness levels, and transportation requirements, as stated in the parent zoning bylaw, must also be followed. Next slide, please. The proposed rezoning is intended to create a consistent signage throughout the site while being sensitive to the nearby residential. City plan identifies West Edmonton Mall as a major node. It's located along a primary corridor of 170th Street and a secondary corridor with citywide mass transit, 87th Avenue. West Edmonton Mall is in alignment with city plan as it serves multiple districts, is connected to both primary and secondary corridors, and is a significant employment center. The proposed rezoning will add to the visual identity of West Edmonton Mall and strengthen the core development within a major node. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your presentation. And council members' questions to members of public. Councillor Jans?
Is it just the public or administration?
No, we go to public first, then we'll come to administration later on.
Sure. Thank you for the presentation. I admit I really struggle with this. I don't understand the benefit to the community in having yet more visual pollution on our roadways in terms of signage and advertising and clutter. I'm really struggling to see what the benefit is here, aside from a monetary benefit for advertising opportunity for the mall. I guess could the guest clarify? This isn't wayfinding or a vital requirement in terms of navigation for the transit system, is it?
No, that is separate because the LRT is on city property and any signage with that would be separate.
Right. Could you elaborate further on the desire or the need for this change?
So the signage requirements currently in the DC, as Mr. Ford had indicated, are quite outdated. The DC is from the original kind of conception of West Edmonton Mall, and so some changes in terms of technology and everything have happened since that time. There are some changes to the zoning which are actually a benefit to the community in terms of currently they're allowed 24 freestanding signs. We are coming down to 22. As well, there's requirements for separation of the signs, which is 45 meters, which is currently not in the zoning bylaw. And as well, there is the restrictions on the timeframes for the digital signs, which is also not in the current DC.
Okay, I have questions for admin, Mr. Mayor, whenever you're done.
Thank you, Councillor Jans. Councillor Salvador?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a few quick questions. I'm wondering how many freestanding signs are currently on site?
They are currently permitted 24 freestanding signs, and they are all permitted to be at 12 meters in height.
Okay, so we're actually going from 24 to 22?
Correct.
Okay. How many of those are digital signs currently?
Can I refer that to Michael Weirs, who is on the call? I'm not too sure as to how many are currently on the site.
Absolutely. Mr. Ware?
Hi there. Yeah, there's no, of the freestanding signs around the property, there are no digital signs.
Okay, and are digital signs currently, and apologies, are they currently permitted under the DC?
Yes, they are. All of the existing uses stay the same in terms of digital signage.
Okay, well, that answers those ones. And just finally, again, you pointed out that, of course, this is in a major node. I'm just trying to get a firm grasp on sort of the benefit of having that additional capacity for signage to, I guess, attract more folks to this major node. You could just speak to it from that perspective. I'm trying to grasp that.
Okay, yeah. So in terms of the signage, as we had indicated, there is a comprehensive sign design plan that is required as part of the DC, and it's included in there. So it provides some consistency to the overall kind of look and feel of the site. It's a little bit of a mishmash right now, just based on the age of the facility and as the signs have gone up. And so that allows, again, for the consistency to meet the character of the mall itself. And as itself, it would provide a bit of kind of wayfinding to the area as an identification to the mall.
Okay, thank you very much. Those are all my questions.
Thank you, Councillor Salvador. Let's see. Oh, Councillor Wright.
Oops. Thank you very much. I'm just wondering, was there any sort of analysis done on how distracting those digital signs are to drivers?
Yes, there was an exercise that was completed and reviewed by transportation. So what they call, it's called the Kona Vision, where there's certain locations that digital signs are not permitted on the site, and that is in accordance with transportation requirements.
Okay, that's great to hear. Thank you. And you've also taken into consideration not just the residential neighbors, but also the hospital neighbors, right?
Correct, yeah. So there's a requirement for the digital signs on 170th Street to be 90 degrees to 170th so that they are not facing the hospital or the residential on 170th.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. So that is it for questions to members of the public, or and I'll go to council members to ask questions of administration. Councillor Jans.
May I ask a question of legal, Mr. Mayor?
Absolutely, they're part of the administration. You can, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To council, are we allowed to ask about or argue against a matter in terms of, for lack of a better term, like public decency or public aesthetic or like community standards reasons?
Councillor, aesthetics is clearly within your authority here in the public hearing and as a land use matter. Sorry, this is Mr. Johnson, in case you can't see me. Public decency, I don't think we bring into here. If you're talking in the realms of morality and whatnot, we don't go there. But as far as aesthetics, impacts on the neighbors, overall integration into the community, anything of that sort is completely appropriate.
Are we allowed to ask about the relationship between the decision to renovate the pedway at West Edmonton Mall and who paid for what portion of that pedway in relation to a decision here for the signage?
Councillor, I would strongly caution against going into the realms of the business or negotiations or anything related to the costs and payments of the pedway. I don't think that's appropriate for a land use conversation.
So can we ask about I guess when you do a DC2, there's a community benefits agreement, right? Or there's usually some, when you do it, I see Mr. Pollock nodding no. I guess what I'm trying to get in other developments, correct me if I'm wrong, if there is a DC2, there's some sort of a provision that supports the community for, like, on sort of the offsetting the impact. Is that not a consideration?
Councillor, if I just may jump in here, sorry, Mr. Johnson. What you're talking about is the community amenity contribution, and that's a policy that's set out through council that recognizes an increase in development rights through the amount of floor area. So typically you're dealing with in a bigger building, essentially, not necessarily specific uses or design around specific uses.
I guess it seems to be that the signage, whether or not it's floor space, is offering a benefit that would be monetized by the development. And I guess I'm trying to get an understanding of some of the considerations are for this the community in this decision. And I apologize, I've never seen anything like this before, and that's why I'm fumbling my questions a bit.
No, for sure. And I'll just give you some background around that community amenity policy. The idea behind it is to offset the impact created by the additional users or residents of a project that's been increased in density. So the notion of applying that to a specific use class, say signage in this case here, is not covered in the policy. I do understand your question that there is a granting of extra development rights here. That is the case if council were to approve this, but it's not outside the purview of any applicant to ask for such of that. It's just that our policy doesn't include that in its evaluation.
Councillor, if I could just add, I mean, this is actually a reduction in the number of signs around the site. The impact, as you alluded to, may be greater, but we have put mitigating measures in place to reduce the times that those impacts will affect or may affect surrounding residents. There's also a lot of light that comes off the mall, a lot of activity around there at all hours of day anyway. And we feel, you know, the separation of the mall, there's 6 lanes of traffic around the mall. We've taken careful consideration of where these signs can be placed. And we're really just trying to bring it in line with the types of signs that are available today that just weren't available through the last couple of decades. So it's more or less, you know, bringing it into today's standards for signs.
Maybe I misunderstood, Mr. Ford. Is it not, though, a numerical reduction from 24 to 22, but the signs are allowed to be bigger in like on the corners and in more prominent locations? Is that not the case?
That is absolutely correct. Yes.
So it is overall. This is a net gain in advertising square footage for the development. Is that not?
That's correct. Yes, it is over above what you would get on a typical shopping center site.
And is there a slippery slope consideration here, precedent for Southgate Mall, Northgate Mall, Calgary Trail properties, White Avenue, others?
I don't feel there is at this point. I mean, given as I alluded to again, the size and magnitude of the mall, we've been through this process with this file for about 2 years. We've had the same conversations with the applicants, and we've tried to temper it as best we can in the way those signs face the cone of vision. There's also a comprehensive site plan that has to come in before any sign applications can be granted. So there's another check and balance. It does go through our sign bylaw officers, and they're very aware of this, and they will be monitoring it further.
Thank you, Councillor Jans. Councillor Stevenson.
Yes, thanks very much, and thanks for the information so far. I guess I just have, similar to Councillor Jans, just some general hesitation around the number of digital signs that we could see on the site. I know that a few years ago, the city was working on doing a comprehensive review of digital signage in our zoning bylaw and coming up with some policy guidelines for that. Is there an update on where that work is, and if the city has any overall policy on digital signage?
Not that I'm aware, Councillor. Maybe Ms. Petram can jump in.
Yeah. Councillor Stevenson, we are looking at the sign schedules associated with the zoning bylaw renewal. How far or the type of changes that will be contemplated, that is still work that's ongoing. And we are bringing a report to Urban Planning Committee in April for discussion with committee.
Sorry, so the digital sign will come forward in the spring? Sorry, I was distracted. I apologize.
No worries. So digital signs are not coming just specifically to Urban Planning Committee. It's the zoning bylaw renewal update that's coming to Urban Planning Committee. And we can provide an update on all of the sign schedules and the type and scope of work that's being done with that.
Okay, so there's still no overall digital signage policy that's been pursued.
There's
That's
no
correct.
digital sign policy. There's practice that's out, and there's regulations as outlined in the zoning bylaw. And if council wished to explore this further, it would be through the zoning bylaw renewal.
Yeah, again, I think I just sort of worry, to Councillor Jansen's point about setting a precedent before we have a comprehensive strategy of digital signage in our city. I really appreciate the work that's been done to limit some of those really immediate impacts, but you know, for my ward, for my condo in Oliver, I see West Edmonton Mall on the horizon, and just with that east-facing roller coaster wall, my understanding is that that's not subject to the time restriction, so that could be running animated motion content 24/7.
That's correct. It could be. Is my understanding as well. Councillor Stevenson, I'll just bring you back to your ward. I know when that's not part of our conversation today, but the administration has been very consistent with this kind of signage around, say, Sir Winston Churchill Square. So it's all looked at in terms of context. How we look at it with other malls remains to be seen. But those are typically under the standard zones we see, such as the Community Shopping Centre Zone, CSC.
Well, and I may be completely incorrect here, but have we permitted major digital signs outside of ICE district?
Yes, Councillor Stevens. So major digitals are permitted around essentially these high user areas, these commercial areas, especially around these shopping centers. And just in terms of relating this to the magnitude of the change, yes, there are some signs that can be bigger, and obviously the roller coaster sign is a part of that. But the regulations around separation distances are still maintained within it. So there is a regulation within the sign schedule 59E that requires each of the signs to be separated by X amount of meters. And that is maintained here, which is why you see that limitation of, say, that reduction of 22 down to 20, or in terms of that signage count. And the ones that are overall bigger, there's only 2 of them that are on the freestanding side, and those are the ones on the prominent corners of 170th, and I believe it's trying to speak, remember the avenue or the street or the avenue about 96th, and then on the other side as well. So it's on the more busy intersections that you see those larger sign opportunities.
Yeah, which I think is not necessarily reassuring. Like, I think having those signs at busy intersections can be a distraction, and really change the feel of an area. So I know there's nothing specific in the DC, but in the baseline zoning bylaw, there is the brightness, the 1100 lumens. And can I just confirm that we would have the capacity to enforce the brightness, particularly the one on the roller coaster side? I know that there are challenges with how lumens are read, and you need to be standing next to it, which creates problems at the best of time with some of the existing freestanding billboards. But I can see that being multiplied on such a large structure.
Councillor, through our bylaw officers, yes, we have that. We are able to enforce it if there are complaints.
I'll follow up with some questions. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Stevenson. Councillor Rutherford?
Yes, thank you for this great conversation. The word that keeps coming to my mind is light pollution. And I know, for example, I'm thinking about the TELUS World of Science, which seems far away, but if we're talking about these kind of lights in the sky, there is the observatory there and the telescope and those things. And I know that was a huge consideration with the Coronation Rec Center planning in terms of light pollution. And so I guess my question to administration is, what kind of assessments have been done from a light pollution perspective on this?
So, Councillor, that's a good question. That is not part of our evaluation. We look at how it meets or deviates from our current regulations in terms of what is currently allowed. There isn't an overall policy in terms of, say, a level of light pollution that a light source can emit outside of, as Councillor Steven alluded to, the number of lumens or the brightness factor of each of these signs.
Councillor Rutherford, if I could just say as well, I mean, the mall does try and be a good neighbour. I mean, it is, again, it's a huge 49 block or 49 hectare site. You know, they do work with the communities. They do have some outreach there as well. So I'm sure there is some, they're probably hearing this today, and they're well aware of the things that they may want to look at going forward. We are looking, as I said, for a comprehensive sign plan that goes along with this upon the first submissions. So we can make them all aware that these are things they should be looking at, as we all should today with any site that's coming in. But anything specific is not written into this DC at this time.
Yeah, and I absolutely, you know, I want to be clear that I don't think that West Edmonton Mall is a bad neighbor. And nor is that what I'm kind of my line of questioning is. But I think as with other things that have come before public hearing and have come before council, there's sometimes a larger policy question. And what decisions are we making before policy has been created and a more comprehensive, because I get like what Mr. Pollock said is that, and I understand like zoning is looking at very specific factors, but a broader policy discussion looks at other factors that zoning alone may not. And so that is, while we're talking about this particular decision in front of us today, I think it is raising a broader policy discussion and question around lighting, around light pollution, which is a real thing. And as we grow to a city of 2 million, how are we factoring for that? And how are we considering that as technologies change? You know, I've been approached about digital signs on CN rail lines, right? So like there's lots of digital signs that we could end up putting up around the city. And I'm sure this isn't the first of many conversations that have happened. So yeah, like for me, it's more just like the question in front of me today is, do I approve this DC2 without any further policy conversations, or are further policy conversations needed to properly inform this DC2? And so that's what I'm grappling with right now. I don't know if admin has any guidance or perspectives from where I am in this, but that is where I'm coming from.
Mr. Johnson?
Councillor Rutherford, I think that's a fair assessment of the situation that council's in today in terms of there's practice around digital signs and there's some guidance in the zoning bylaw renewal, but you're correct. We don't have a digital sign policy that looks at the overall night sky impacts as a result of digital signs. And so I appreciate the challenging situation that council's in with this situation.
I think to add to that, McCabe, just in terms of looking at an application when we have that gray area or that gap between policy and implementation, we look at our current regulations and how this one deviates from it and makes it better or makes it worse. In this case, the DC restricts the operating hours of the digital sign. So there is a de-energization period when it does hit that nighttime. Where our current zoning bylaw only really looks for de-energizing when it's next to natural areas. So this is going above and beyond what our current regulations and standards are. Yes, there's that trade-off of a larger signs for a couple of them, but there's also a further reduction.
So can we make an amendment to the bylaw today to make sure that that sign on the roller coaster wall also has a charge down time?
I believe it does. I believe it's captured under the general regulation about major digitals in the zone itself. I'll just have a quicker read as we go through.
It's okay. I can come back around or let other people, but I did hear before that wasn't included, that was not in the sign on that was not. So either way, I'm out of time. I'll circle back and see what others questions have.
Thank you, Councillor Rutherford. Councillor Paquette.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you everyone for all the hard work today. And thank you, Mr. Pollock, for that magnificent beard. One of the things that I'm wondering is, just follow up on Councillor Rutherford's line of questioning is, I remember we were having a conversation about the brightness of digital signs in relation to driver safety. We didn't really extend it into light pollution or dark sky sort of efforts, or into wildlife confusion efforts, although we've done that for buildings. So I'm just wondering, do we actually, I mean, I know we have some policy around these signs, but do we have any policy that addresses those concerns? And if so, would it be as simple as making a quick subsequent to ask to develop that policy?
Councillor, as you mentioned, we do have guidelines and restrictions around the cone of vision, so for the safe operation of intersections.
Yeah.
We don't have any policy or guidance in terms of say wildlife distraction or avian issues. It could be a quick supplement, but it's definitely not a quick piece of work to move forward.
No, it wouldn't be a quick piece of work, but increasingly it seems that Edmontonians are caring about this issue. So maybe it would be prudent if Councillor Rutherford wanted to draft something like that up. I'd be happy to second it. In relation to this land use conversation, just to reiterate, my understanding is that what we're looking at is a decrease in signs, but they will be more activated. And that's really the question before us today. Is that right?
That's right, yes.
Yeah, okay. And so any policy surrounding that we can circle back to. But in the meantime, with what we've got right now, this is permitted use.
Correct.
Yeah, okay. So I think it's important that we have that conversation going forward, but I'm not so sure if we should pause this approval, you know, understanding that that's going to be a larger body of work and is probably going to be a much larger conversation impacting a lot of different things. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Paquette. Councillor Salvador?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And yeah, I'm also just sort of in that space between, yes, we have a decision for us today, but this is also part of a broader policy conversation. And I guess I'm wondering, you know, even if we were to have a larger, more comprehensive policy on this, would this still be an outlier? I guess that's what I'm trying to grapple with. I mean, like West Edmonton Mall is such a massive site. Would we expect that it would still be covered in that type of policy, or would we still be, you know, getting these types of questions? I'm just trying to understand the context there.
Councillor Salvador, that's the question we've grappled with for 2 years since we've been dealing with this question. We've come at it from a number of different ways. How do we look at signs around the mall? What's the complexity, given that the mall is a different animal, for want of a better term, to most other malls in the city? It's a major hub. The LRT is going there. The separation from roadways, the amount of tourism, entertainment, everything else, the way it's developed. We do feel it is a different form of development than how we would look at most other commercial activities. But nevertheless, we always come back to how does the existing zoning bylaw deal with this, and how do we bring it as closely into line with that as we can. So I think we tried to do that here. We have gone a little bit bigger, but again, we recognize the scale and complexity of this situation. And I think we'd probably end up there again if this was to come forward.
Right. Okay. So even if we did have that policy discussion, we could likely end up in a similar position, just because of the unique nature of the site. Is that what I'm hearing?
I think so. I mean, you look at the mall itself, it's surrounded by a sea of parkades. You can have the LRT there. How do you see the signs from the street as you're driving in? What are wayfaring signs? What signs belong on buildings? What are allowing some off-site digital advertising? The technology has changed considerably. We're in this period now where we're really trying to come to grips with what these signs look like. You've probably seen them along some of the major highways, entrance routes into the city itself. Our sign officers have a great deal of difficulty dealing with any sign applications, particularly large ones. So they've been involved with this. They think they've got some comfort going forward to reviewing it, but there would be a whole scope of the work to reevaluate this again, which I think is we'd have to do again.
Okay. Well, I really appreciate the answer on that, and I'll ponder that for a bit. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Salvador. If I have just one question that occurred I need to ask if you could take the chair, Councillor
Yes, I am the chair.
And then and that is I know you talked about the positioning of the signs away from neighborhoods and hospitals. I'm just thinking about as the LRT gets there and the positioning of these signs related to LRT safety and as they come in and come out. Is that considered into thinking into the future, where these signs will be located and how they will impact driver visibility, passenger visibility to the platform, and all that?
So very, very much so. That was one of the questions we had. It's still to be worked out, I think, because the details for how the LRT approaches the mall, the signage, the traffic regulation there as well. So that one, when that sign comes in, it will be very, very carefully evaluated.
Okay, good. All right, and I will move the second round.
Seconded by?
Second.
Great. Moved by Mayor Sohi, seconded by Councillor Knapp. And let's vote on second round.
Yes.
Just looking for Councillor Rice's vote.
I'm a yes.
Thank you. We have all the votes.
Great. Please display the vote. That is carried. And I'll pass the chair back, Mayor Sohi.
Thank you, Councillor Salvador. And we'll see the list appear here. Councillor Jans.
Thank you. I think I'm ready to speak to it, but I guess before I do that, I just want to ask administration. I feel like I've heard enough that I can't support this item here, and I'm wondering, is it better to refer it back to administration, or is it better to vote it down here at the meeting? Because I understand if I think we vote it down, it can't come back for a calendar year. But if we refer it back to administration, it can be incorporated into the zoning bylaw work and some of these bigger principles, consultations, etc. So I'm wondering what would be the preferred option in a situation like this?
Councillor, thanks for that question, and Mr. Johnson can step in as well. Obviously, when you refer it back, it would be preference of administration to have very specific reason why it's being referred back. If it's open-ended to say include the work that's being completed in the zoning bylaw renewal, that's fairly open-ended as well, with an open-ended time frame, in generally speaking. So if it is to be referred back, we would like specific direction in terms of if it's limiting the number of digital signs, ask for less digital signs, as an example. Otherwise, yeah, the other option is to vote against it. When it comes to bringing back a specific zone, there is a clause that says it can't come back with 1 year, but this being a direct control, and this is where Mr. Johnson can help out. There's a leeway in terms of the amount of changes that can occur within that direct control that just make it different on the basis that it is a DC.
Yeah, Mr. Pollock is correct. We often see this in, well, not often, but direct controls, because as long as there's some change of good faith or change of substance, it's not the same application and therefore can come back within the year.
Councillor Jones, if I might just add as well, I mean, this has gone through, as I mentioned, 2 years of extensive consultation. We have reached out to the community leagues surrounding the mall. As you can see today, there are none here speaking against it. But we feel this is similar to what you might expect. Again, for the size of the mall itself, it's probably not untoward. Although it does seem large at this point, it's probably in context with the overall size of the site.
I guess I feel like the community leagues are engaged saying this is going to happen. How would you like it to be better or worse slightly, instead of saying, I think what I would hope we could have as a broader zoning conversation at all about, do we want to be down zoning outdoor advertising, lighting, electric signage, etc. completely? I think we need to have a conversation about dark sky provisions, about light pollution, about the ability to be in public spaces and free from being bombarded with advertising. I think maybe in the zoning bylaw renewal, there needs to be a consideration about the elimination of public advertising, not a supersizing of it. So I think I believe we need to put more options on the table than maybe the community leagues were presented with. So again, I'm also really concerned about the slippery slope with other properties and other spaces that I know if they see this going up here, we're gonna get those asks elsewhere. So I would like to move then to refer this to administration to have this work incorporated into the zoning bylaw renewal. And the language that Mr. Pollock said. Sorry.
So Councillor Jens is moving a referral motion, Madam Clerk.
I'll
And
second that.
Is that in order? Because as I heard from Mr. Pollock, that referral needs to be very specific. It can't be as broad as the future policy development. Am I right?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, a referral motion can happen at any point in the public hearing, so the procedural timing of it is fine. I think Mr. Pollock probably is going to want to weigh in on what specificity he'd need for some direction on that, how far into the details you'd need. Mr. Pollock, do you have?
Agreed. Yeah, I guess when speaking to that earlier, just mentioned that it would, in order for the referral to be directive and allow us to complete that work, we would need an understanding as to what the major issues are, or what needs to be changed in the specific zone itself, so that we can know that endpoint and bring it back.
So in this case, there would not be an endpoint, right? Am I understanding it right, Mr. Pollock?
It would be it's very vague
Yeah.
right now, and we're uncertain as to what type of work we're to bring in or incorporate into the bylaw.
Okay. All right, so Councillor Jens, you want to think it over. I'll go to Councillor Stevenson because you moved something, but nobody has seconded yet, right? So
I seconded it, but recognizing
Councillor
that it needs
Stevenson
a
did?
bit of work.
So Councillor Stevenson seconded. So we do have a motion on the floor then? Okay.
Well, or what I would maybe suggest, maybe I see that we have our break coming up, and perhaps over the break we could collaborate to get some wording that works for administration and for our intent as well. But just a few more questions on my end. You know, I do really appreciate the work that's been happening over the past 2 years.
So just hold on, Councillor Stevenson. I just need to conclude this before I give you the chair, before I acknowledge your time. Just give me 1 second. So just need a guidance from you on this to our legal counsel.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I wonder if what might be helpful is if we just don't second this yet, if it just holds in abeyance while she asks her questions, and then we could try and work on a motion over the break. Rather than the motion being on the floor at this time, it may be better just to finish out questions and then have the motion brought, if the councillors are okay with that.
Yes,
I can withdraw my second, no problem.
And Councillor Stevenson can withdraw her second, right, to this without council consent. Okay, she can? I'm just looking to Madam Clerk, sorry.
Just as long as that's okay with the will of council.
Is council okay with that? Yes, I'm seeing some nods, right? I'm not seeing anybody, but nobody seems to be objecting to this. So Councillor Stevenson is withdrawing her second to the motion. So, okay, now Councillor Stevenson, I'll go to you.
Great. Can I just get my clock reset?
Yeah, of course, we'll make sure it's reset, Councillor Stevenson.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to say to administration, I really appreciate the challenge of doing this work in the absence of any policy guidelines. I think it's incredibly challenging, and I think the approach that you've taken in terms of looking at the precedent in existing regulations in the zoning bylaw is a really logical one. It makes sense, and I follow that. I think where I'm still very uncomfortable is, again, in the absence of that overall strategy. This is a really significant property, and it's a significant number of digital signs. But it's really that large one on the roller coaster. Like I believe that would be the largest digital sign in our city. Is that a fair-ish assumption?
That is, Councillor.
Okay, So again, biggest digital sign in our city. I don't know again about sort of that, the further distance impact. Oh, and did we get clarification about whether that is subject to the de-energizing provision?
So the roller coaster sign, it's a little bit unclear. We have a possible motion ready to make it crystal clear that the roller coaster sign would be part of that de-energizing as well.
Okay, I mean, even at that, again, the midnight to 5 a.m., I don't know that that's really helping in the sense that the visual impact is going to be there during most people's waking hours. So someone who goes to bed at 10 and wakes up at 7, the sign will be continuously on from their perspective. So again, not to put you on the spot or have an answer there, but again, I think just some of those specifics, I'm still worried by. And again, just that wider view impact, because again, West Edmonton Mall is incredibly visible from a very far distance. And I'm concerned that some of the visual impact of that large sign hasn't been analyzed. So I can yield the rest of my time and we can potentially go to break early, unless there's further comments that administration wanted to add for our consideration. Okay, I'll take my time, Mr. Mayor, and I'm happy to work over the break on some
So
motions.
I see no more questions on from council members on this. We are getting close to our break, and we need to go to public members for comments, for council members to ask questions to the public, if there are any questions from council to the public on information arising out of this, right? So we have that process next, right? So because we concluded the questions to administration at this time.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, at any point, a referral could have been made, and then you do not need to go back to public, because this would all return to a public hearing at another point. So it depends on what council's will is after the break with this matter.
So if a referral is made, then
That would end the matter and until it comes back.
but I think council members may have questions to the members of the public that may benefit us to clarify some points that may help us with our decision without looking at referral.
Perfect. And Mr. Chair, you have the ability then to ask for those, if there's questions of administration or of the public before you would conclude the referral motion then, yes.
Before referral
Before
motion
voting
is
on
made?
the-
Before
before
voting
voting on the
okay.
referral motion.
So even if referral is made, we still have the ability to ask members of the public questions?
Yes.
Got it. Okay, good. All right, we'll come back at 3:45. Until then, we are in recess.
but.
You shouldn't apologize. It was great. It was like I'm getting ready for like a serious, you're responding to something really serious here. Starting your TV show.
I'm about to lay down the law.
Okay.
That's right. I was ready to rumble.
All right, let's call this meeting back to order. Let's do a roll call. Councillor Wright.
Good afternoon.
Councillor Knack.
Good afternoon.
Councillor Principe.
Hello.
Councillor Stevenson.
Good afternoon.
Councillor Paquette.
Hello.
Councillor Tang.
Hi, everyone.
Councillor Hamilton.
Hello?
Councillor Rutherford.
Hello.
Councillor Salvador. Councillor Salvador. Councillor Cartmel.
Good afternoon.
Councillor Rice.
Good afternoon.
Councillor Jans.
Good afternoon.
Thank you so much. So Mr. Johnson, we have, I don't know if the referral motion has been crafted or not, right? So, but I just want to know that the next part of the process without a referral would be for council members to ask if they have any questions to the public on new information arising so far, right?
Correct, Mr. Mayor, yes.
And if the referral motion is made, council members still can ask questions on the new information arising, and members of the public can respond to that, right?
Yes, if you wish to do so, you do that before voting on the motion.
Before voting on the
Yes.
motion, absolutely. Good, okay. All right, just want to, from a process point of view, just want to make sure that we are not restricted to ask any questions to the public if a referral motion is on the table. All right, is there a referral motion, Madam Clerk?
Yes, we can put it back up on the board as long as that's all right with Councillor Jans, and then we can have it seconded.
Councillor Jans, would you like to move that, please?
So moved. And I'm sorry, I don't have the exact wording.
Here we go.
There we go.
Can you read it, please?
Yes, that Charter Bylaw 19127 be referred back to administration to work with the applicant to reduce the square footage of digital signs to help address night sky visibility and wildlife impacts.
Can you explain it, please?
Sure, to introduce it, this has been, I think, an ongoing concern for many residents around the city about just the light pollution, the visual clutter, the constant feeling that we can't, drive down the street or walk down the street without being bombarded with advertising. And this motion here would help to ensure that through the decision today, we're not, in effect, granting more square footage of signage and digital signage, but rather moving towards a reduction. As I indicated, I'm worried about the precedent that this would set for other malls, other strips, like other areas of the city, and I think it's important that we have the chance to examine this further. There's other cities around that are going to eliminate light pollution, that are going to full dark sky preserve. And there's really innovative things that are happening. So when we think about our city plan and our climate goals and our other livability goals, I see this as a step in a more sustainable direction. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jans. And again, this is seconded by Councillor Stevenson, right? Madam Clerk?
Yes, and I'm happy to second. There was just a late addition of some wording to reduce the square footage and operational hours of digital signs.
So I think, just hold on, Councillor. I would just want to make sure we're following the proper process. So if you have any, you can second it, and if you have amendments later, you can propose amendments. I need a seconder for this.
Yeah, happy to second it.
Thank you, Councillor Stevenson. Okay, so we have list of speakers. Can you, and I have Councillor Paquette first one to go, right, Madam Clerk? Because that list is not clear to me. Okay, Councillor Paquette.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So just to clarify, are we asking questions of the public now or of administration?
Yes, that's my understanding, that we can ask questions to the public or at this time to administration, right? Or We're still with administration.
I believe, Mr. Mayor, you'd start with questions of the mover if there is any.
Yeah, okay.
And then we could discuss with administration. We're still in administration time, and then you would go to questions of the public.
So first questions to the mover.
To the mover or administration, before you then go back to the public.
Okay, got it. Okay.
Perfect.
Go ahead.
Okay, so just to administration. So what the public hasn't seen is that there is also a subsequent that's been drafted up that is going to be made after all of this. And the subsequent is basically going to deal with the questions posed here today on an overall sort of blanket approach, you know, the way that we do most of our city policies. So with that in mind, I'm just wondering, is it better to sort of, because I understand the intent of the motion and I actually don't disagree with it at all, but I'm wondering if as far as an approach, it's better to do these things as one-offs or to just sort of understand that even if this gets passed, it's going to be subject to whatever comes out as a result of the subsequent motion. So which, like policy-wise and implementation-wise, what makes more sense for administration as far as certainty for future applicants?
Councillor Briquette, it's always best to have the policy direction first because it gives an applicant the certainty associated with the public hearing process. But the reality is any type of policy work in this space would take quite some time, and we've done a lot of work with sign companies in the past in order to get to where we're at. Doesn't mean that we shouldn't continue to look at this if this is the will of council, if the subsequent motion passes. It just isn't going to happen tomorrow, as an example, that we have that new policy work done, because policy work typically takes 12 to 18 months minimum.
Yeah, which if you want a good policy, it's kind of worth the investment, I would say. Now, when it comes to this referral, I can see in the referral that this is we're working with the applicant to reduce square footage of digital signs, help address night sky visibility and wildlife impacts. But my question is by what metrics are these being based? I guess that would go to the mover.
Councillor Jans, that was to you.
Yeah, I'm reflecting on that. The question was,
I am absolutely sympathetic to this motion. I just think that we need to have clarity on what we're actually asking for here.
I'm not sure. So the question was, by what metrics would we contemplate a reduction?
Yeah, like so. What's the appropriate square footage, and what is the expected outcome, and why, and how do we measure that, and how does that compare to other municipalities, that sort of thing. So it's just sort of, it's unclear to me what we're actually asking for, which is kind of important in a referral.
So I would expect, if status quo is here, if the request is to move us here, that the reduction would be something not to exceed what the additional ask was. Like I could specify a number of lumens if that would be more helpful.
Well, I mean, we could, but I'm just wondering, like, what are the best practices and guidelines that we're actually following? And so I'm just wondering if we're putting the cart before the horse with this, if we should work on policy, and then we can put this sort of, if we have a policy that requires guidelines, that can be put across every sign across the city. It makes maybe to me a little more sense to do it that way. I don't know, because I don't know what we're actually asking for.
I don't disagree. However, we have, in the interest of resolution of the matter before us, the referring it back without direction isn't an option. I guess we could just vote down the proposal to wait for the policy work to contemplate, or we could look for some sort of more compromise measures, such as the motion here.
Right. So, okay. I'm going to listen to other questions. I'm having a little bit of trouble here. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Paquette. Councillor Knack.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess that I think I have one last question based off Councillor Paquette's questions, and maybe to Mr. Pollock or Mr. McCabe. That's the one thing I'm struggling with. You know, typically, and again, same sort of idea. I appreciate the intent, but usually, if we refer something back to work on setbacks, we usually say to be in alignment with another type of zone, so you have something specific. The way I read this is that, you know, you could reduce it by 1% and it would meet the intent of the motion. And so I'm just wondering from the administration's perspective, if we have what we need to provide an answer that's more than like a, you know, small drop.
Yeah, Councillor Knack, I mean, it isn't as specific as we usually like a referral motion, but I think this is a situation where we could work with the applicant based on this direction in this referral motion. And if it's a 1%, I think that'd be hard for us to support, to bring that back to council based on the conversation today. I think we'd want to look at something like what are the night sky impacts overall, with a few different percentage point reductions in the application, and give you some analysis to help support that. We haven't quite figured it out yet, but we will work it with the applicant on figuring out what a reasonable way forward is based on the intent of the conversation here today.
The other question I have, and maybe this is more to the mover, I think, and I'll speak to it later, but there was a pretty hefty amount of engagement with the local communities surrounding West Edmonton Mall. And this just refers them to work with administration, and knowing that the communities have been actively involved, I think they're technically not included in this. And I'm wondering if that is something you would want, considering they've been involved for about 2 years of work to get to this point.
Councillor, we could add to the motion and complete additional public engagement to
I guess
recognize.
Appreciate that. I guess I'll put it to the mover first, because again, the communities have been involved for 2 years. So to leave them out feels like a disservice to the work they've already done.
That certainly wasn't the intent. I just thought it would be included. If it needs to be explicitly said, then yes.
Yeah, I would add, and I'll still debate whether to support the main motion, but I think at a minimum we would need to have that, just to make it clear, since they have been involved for some time. So, okay, well, if that's, I'll either make that amendment, Mr. Mayor, or if it's friendly, we can just have that added in.
Well, I'll check with the council members if they consider that friendly. I don't see any, there's not issues being friendly. Okay, I'll just maybe wait a few seconds to see if people think it's not friendly. I hear none, so that's a friendly amendment. Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Those are all my questions. I'll come back to speak to it after. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Knack. Councillor Hamilton?
Thank you. My questions are for the members of the public. Councillor Paquette and Councillor Knack asked my questions. So if we're going in a certain order, I can come back?
Yeah, just wait then, Councillor Hamilton. We'll come to that. Got tape. Councillor Cartmel?
I'm just to speak to it, so I'll wait my turn.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Cartmel. Councillor Wright?
Hi, thank you. To the mover, in our shared document, we've talked about or added in a few other sort of conditions that we'd like to see. I don't know if you've had a chance to look at it. As far as climate goals, I've added in the effects of digital signage on driver distraction. Would those be considered friendly amendments to include?
Your question, sorry, to Councillor Wright, is that the mover or?
Yes, to the mover.
Yeah, absolutely. I believe Councillor Stevenson had amendments that may include those to that effect. Those are absolutely considerations that should be discussed.
Okay. So can we add them now at this point, or do we wait until we vote on this one? Or I guess I'm just looking for some direction here.
I think Councillor Stevenson had wording.
Okay. All right, I'll wait until she brings that forward then. And then can we also look at maybe using this to establish a policy? Somebody wanted some sort of formalized outcome of this. Would that be something that could be considered by administration?
Yes, Councillor Wright, that would be as part of a subsequent motion from this application.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. So we need to go to Councillor Stevenson, you haven't had a first round on the referral, right? So I'll go to you. Councillor
Great,
Stevenson?
thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I think, there's just a few, so the addition, the friendly amendment of conduct additional public engagement. I also had a suggestion, if it's friendly, just looking at to reduce the square footage and operational hours of digital signs. I know administration referenced needing to make a tweak to really clarify the de-energizing requirements. And I think there's also scope to look at those hours of 12, midnight to 5 a.m. So I would just offer that to the assembly as a friendly amendment. So just read the applicant to reduce the square footage and operational hours of digital signs to help address the night sky, or help address night sky visibility and the following.
So I think the question to administration would be, does that significantly change the intent of the motion or not? Mr. Johnson?
I believe, I think my suggestion, Mr. Mayor, would be that you look at doing an amendment to the motion, because I believe Councillor Wright also had elements she wanted to add in there, and you could just do it all as one. If at some point you left the realm of the initial proposal.
Yeah.
I think Councillor Wright wanted as well the introduction of matters related to driver safety and climate change, if I remember right. So maybe all of those should be one global amendment, if that's agreeable to Councillor Stevenson. I'm not sure.
But that won't be friendly, though. We would
No,
have to vote on that.
I think you're changing the substance at this point.
That's
Yes.
Well, and maybe just before we decide the direction, I did want to follow up on this thread around what I worry about is we'll refer this back. So the initial motion that I proposed was that it be referred back until a report is brought forward, sort of outlining the greater policy work. Because what I worry about is that without that broader framework, I think we may just frustrate administration in terms of referring it back, asking them to come forward. And then I feel in the absence of that additional policy work, I would be in the same position of saying, well, we don't have that additional policy work to inform the decision. So, I mean, I'm open to the will of the assembly. I certainly happy to make an amendment to capture all of the pieces that we've just discussed. But again, I think what we're adding is actually just becoming that subsequent motion about the policy work that we need to have done. So I'd maybe just ask, I know I can't actually ask, but maybe my council colleagues can just look at the document and how the subsequent motion is currently drafted. But sorry, Mr. Mayor, I'm looking for direction in terms of, actually, maybe I will ask to administration. Is it your preference that the referral motion is it is not attached to the policy work or that report? Because I note that the report would come back September 27th, which doesn't seem too outrageously far away if the referral was tied back to that, but just wanted to get your perspectives.
Councillor Stephen, it'd be our preference that they weren't tied, because that report that we're looking at as a subsequent motion would be coming back with a work plan of options and analysis of how we can actually do that work and integrate it with some of the other work that we're doing. So, the applicant has current development rights right now. And so I would say the subsequent motion that was on the floor gave us some opportunity and flexibility to work with the applicant to see if there was potentially a middle ground here between their current development rights. And I think if you were to add a lot to this referral back, then they might just apply under their current development rights.
Thank you. That's really helpful advice. So the only change that I would be interested in introducing again is just the square footage and operational hours. That's the one amendment that I would like to make to the motion that's on the floor. And if I should do that formally, I'm happy to do that. And if we're doing a formal, then I'm happy to add on council rights pieces as well.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Stevenson. So I just need an advice on this, right? How we move forward, whether Councillor Stevenson makes her amendment on its own or bundle it with Councillor Wright. Then there'll be a standalone amendment, not a friendly one, but we would have to vote on that first, right? So
Correct. As I understand it, Councillor Stevenson's okay to include Councillor Wright's suggestions in hers, so there would be one amendment, but it would be a formal amendment that would then be voted on and, if passed, added into this.
Yeah.
And then you could carry on with your conversation here or go to the public if you're at that stage.
I think this is the challenge when we're trying to do these things on the fly, right? Yeah, it causes those concerns, right? So, okay, I'll leave that to Councillor Stevenson and Councillor Wright to work out that if they want to make one amendment. If not, then they can move the amendment separately and we can vote separately on those. And I'll go to Councillor, Councillor Knack already had around. If Councillor Salvador take a chair, I just need to have a couple of questions.
Yes, I have the chair.
Yeah, I just want to follow up on that, Ms. McCabe. That's one of the questions I had. First of all, they have development rights now, right? Which exceed than what the new application is.
They have development rights now for 24 signs, and someone else from the team could perhaps speak to the details of that, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, they have development rights now for 24 signs. They're more in line with the standard zoning bylaw requirements for signs in terms of size of those signs.
Yeah.
So as it stands, yes, they could come in tomorrow for 24 signs around the site.
Right, and none of those signs are currently digital, but they could convert them to digital without seeking any approval whatsoever, right?
Correct.
Or they might have to apply for do they have to apply for a development permit or anything,
Yep.
right? No, they would have to do that, right? So,
Yes.
But they're granted that
Technical
right
studies.
to do so, right? So I think if the applicant feels, and this is the question we will ask them when we go to that, they feel that, this subsequent motion or referral motion is not something that's acceptable to them, they can pull their current application and just move on with their current development rights.
Correct.
Okay, I just wanted to understand that. Okay, good. Thank you so much. And I will move the second round.
Second.
Great, moved by Mayor Sohi, seconded by Councillor Tang. Let's vote on a second round, please.
Just looking for Councillor Rutherford's vote.
Looks like Councillor Rutherford just rejoined. We'll give her just a second.
I'm a yes, sorry.
Thank you. We have
Technical issues here.
No problem. Please display the vote. That is carried. Back to Mayor Sohi.
I'll take the chair back. Thank you so much for that. And I'll go to Kenny. I'm just waiting for the list to appear. So Councillor Cartmel was to speak. Councillor Knack, you're next.
I'm to speak once
Yes,
the
speak
questions
to
are done. Thank you.
And Councillor Stevenson.
Sure, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I will just be moving the one amendment to the motion, just to include and operational hours. Councillor Wright's consideration will be covered in the subsequent motion.
Okay, so you're moving that the operational, restriction on operational hours, right?
Yeah, so the motion currently reads, I believe, to reduce signage square footage. I would just like to say reduce square footage and operational hours.
Okay, got it. And we need a seconder.
Second?
That's second by Councillor Wright. So we have an amendment to the referral motion.
We're just getting it up on the
Yeah.
screen for you.
Okay, now we have a number of people who were from the previous list. New person on that list is Councillor Paquette. Councillor Paquette, any questions on the amendment to the referral?
Yeah, just to administration, it seems like this is starting to get a little bit tricky in that we're not sort of, we don't have an aligned policy. We're creating a special rule for one organization or one business that doesn't apply to any other businesses. And it's given me quite a bit of pause. So thoughts on that?
Councillor, the zone that's ahead of you is a direct control, which allows that type of specificity within it.
Yeah.
Motion itself, I think we take it to understand that we're looking for a reduction in the digital signage that is being proposed today. That will be sort of our benchmark, and we'll work with the applicant to get to that point. What that ultimate end goal is, we don't know. Is it a reduction in signs? Possibly. Is it a reduction in square footage on each of the signs? Possibly. And then obviously the additional direction of the reduction in operational hours is also explicit. So that's what we would look to work with the applicant and then bring back to a future council date.
And Councillor, this happens at public hearings sometimes for applications where council wants us to look at a bit more local context associated with the development application. So I think with the motion that's on the floor, we could figure out what a reasonable approach is forward with the applicant.
Okay. Yeah. No, I just, again, I am not opposed to any of this. I just think that procedurally and as far as policy, we're getting a little bit murky here, in my opinion. I know it's a DC2, so legally we're within our rights to do this, but overall, as a consistent, policy and leadership style, it gets. I feel like we're getting a little bit tricky here. So yeah, okay. So I think that we can, obviously we can do this. The question is, should we do this? Because I feel like we might be putting the cart before the horse a little bit. Just love to hear from Councillor Stevenson on that.
Thank you, Councillor Paquette. I see no more.
Oh, sorry, that was a question for Councillor Stevenson.
Okay.
My apologies.
Yeah, I think absolutely in the perfect world, we would have the policy in place and that would inform the direction here. I do understand that that policy work is far down the road, and for me, I'm finding it hard to answer, not thinking about being in previous positions, but I think this provides clarity in terms of administration being able to go back to the applicant to negotiate on these specific items and come back with an alternate proposal.
Okay, so the problem is that I'm losing clarity in that by what metric are we using the mall's business hours, the business hours of the mall itself, because it's actually, you can walk around freely after stores are closed, the movie theater, the hotel. It starts to get a little bit messy at this point, and that's my concern.
Oh, sorry, the operational hours are for the digital signage. So instead of being de-energized between 12 and 5 a.m., that would potentially be from 12 to 7 a.m. That's what I mean by operational hours, just for the signage.
Yeah, okay. Again, totally support all this. I'm not sure if I can actually support this with my vote. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Paquette. So we have amendment to the referral. And now I would like to ask council members if they have questions to the members of the public, right? Am I right, Mr. Johnson?
Mr. Mayor, if you do it now, it would probably be on the amendment. I think you may want to deal with the amendment so that you have the full referral motion when you go to questions of the public.
Okay.
Would
got
that
it.
make sense?
Okay, good.
Okay.
So we have an amendment to this referral motion, and we have a motion, that's moved by Councillor Stevenson and seconded by Councillor Wright. I don't see any further questions on this, and I call to vote.
Just waiting for Councillor Jans. Oh, we have all the votes.
Display the votes, please. That is carried.
We'll just get the motion as amended up on the board for you.
Okay. So the amended motion is on the floor now, and I'll get to the list. The new person on that is Councillor Rutherford. Councillor Rutherford, any questions on the referral motion?
I just want to speak to it.
Okay, we'll wait for that then. I see no one else on the list. Now I will ask.
I see Councillor Principe on the
Councillor
list.
Principe? Oh, here you go. Councillor Principe, you go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm also just to speak to this, so,
Okay, got it.
yeah, thank you.
Okay, so if we go to this, to speak on this, then at this time, I would like to see if council members have any questions to the public on the new information arising out of the discussion so far, including the referral motion, which is on the floor. So, Councilman, what I'll do is, Madam Clerk, can you clear this list so there's no confusion? We can come back to the list later on of the council members, right? So we know who's have questions to the, okay. So, council members, questions to the public on information arising. Councillor Hamilton.
Hi. I don't know if this questions are directed to Ms. Liu or the other speaker who's here for information. Does this motion give you clarity in terms of the work that you need to do? Would you be willing to do it? And do you have the resources to do this level of work?
Okay, I'll answer portions of it, and some of it I may have to refer to Mr. Weirs, who's here. So yeah, in terms of kind of working on the square footage, the operational hours, and those things, I think we can work with administration on those items. In regards to kind of addressing night sky, kind of visibility, those pieces will be a little bit more difficult, and we may need some kind of information or terms of reference or something from the city in terms of how that information is put together, who are the experts we can reach out to who can provide these types of studies, and also who at the city has the expertise to review these studies as well, which I'm not too sure. The signs are proposed to be turned off in the evening, so I don't know whether or not that helps in terms of some of the night sky pieces. But definitely something that we can look at.
And as I recall, they do adjust to the fluctuating daylight and nighttime hours throughout the year, because 12 to 5 in high summer is less impactful than 12 to 5 a.m. in peak winter when we have very little daylight. So these are specific maximum or sort of minimum hour depowering regulations, but they're not, is your intention to operate to that minimum?
That is correct for now. That would be operate at that minimum. And yeah, currently there is no regulations in terms of timing for digital signs on that property. And the only kind of policy the city has is, again, I think Mr. Pollock had referred to only where abutting a natural area. Do they have any restrictions? The signs can be on kind of 24/7 around the city.
So so currently there are no restrictions. The amendment to the DC would give the restrictions that I think have been brought up as concerns. But if left status quo, this could operate without restriction. Right now.
Correct, yeah. Yeah, the current DC would allow for 24 digital signs with no restrictions on times for permits to go in tomorrow.
All right. I'll maybe go to Mr. Weir in terms, see if he had anything to add with respect to the question about resourcing this kind of work. And if it's really clear in terms of what is being asked of you and your timelines, it should be able to bring that back.
Hello, yes, Michael Wires.
Sorry,
correct.
Mr. Wires. Yeah.
So yeah, I'd like to actually, I don't know if it's, if I have the ability here to make some comments on most of the items that you all have been concerned about. The dark skies thing first, yes, from midnight to 5 a.m. they're turned off completely, so there is no issue with dark skies. Yes, we do have the fluctuation between summer and winter times because of the sun being at different times of the day. Also with that, during that time, it's not that the sign is on, it's on, but it only has one image. The images don't change. And when the images are constantly flashing to different images every 10 seconds or whatever the cycle is, that's where you perceive, oh, there's a sign, oh, there's a sign, oh, there's a sign. This stays on one image and that's it for those hours. So it isn't providing that change in light to make you feel like there's a sign there making that. It would be realistically no different than a paper billboard sign with a light shining on it. If you're going to turn off these signs that have a static image, then I would suggest that you need to go look at all the billboard signs out there with the lights shining on them and have to turn them off as well, because that would be no different. Additional to that, the roller coaster wall, everybody talking about this large sign on there, remembering that in the DC2 that we propose, it's that 50% of that wall is all that's allowed to have signs, and only 50% of that area, which is 25% of the entire area, is allowed to have digital signs, and that's digital signs. I can't say that it wouldn't, but it's unlikely that we would want to put up one large sign. So it would be smaller signs spaced out to have the different advertising, not one giant sign. But remembering that that sign can only be 25% of that wall. So when you're seeing it, I used to live on Jasper Ave and 127th Street on the 17th floor, and I could see West Edmonton Mall. It would be a tiny, tiny little screen that it would never have any kind of an impact on me, that it being there. But at the same time, I don't believe we have it specifically noted in the DC2, but we would have no issues with it following the same timeline guidelines, so it would be off. So realistically, the only time that these signs are going to be on creating a visual effect of people seeing them is going to be during the daylight hours. So the whole dark sky thing, I don't think would be an issue.
Thank you so much. I'm so sorry. You're 1 minute and 14 seconds above time, over time. Sorry there, but Mr. Wire. But there are other questions, so you may follow up on that. Right. So, Councillor Wright.
Thank you. I guess I'm looking for clarity. I've heard it said that the applicant is coming forward to request the zoning changes, but if they aren't approved, they can still put up signs regardless? Is that
It's
correct?
a question to administration. Is
Yes.
that?
This has to be a question. At this time, questions are only to the members of the public, because that's my
Okay, so to
understanding,
Mr.
right?
Wires then, your current zoning would allow you to put up any sign that you want right now?
Yes,
So
we're
then can I
actually
ask,
restricting ourselves.
okay, so then can I ask, why are you coming in for the zoning change? What's the reason for that?
To develop a standard by which we can install signage to a better quality and better quality around the mall, to upgrade, to, yeah. I don't know how else to describe it, but.
So, okay, to be a better community partner, maybe? I don't know, is that?
Yeah, that definitely that. We've definitely had more engagement with the neighbors around here since I've been here anyway, and this started before I came here, but yeah, that's the intent, is to be a good neighbor and develop some good regulations on all of this.
Okay, thank you very much for that clarity.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. I see no more questions to the members of the public. And next process on this is for us to vote on the referral.
Councillors that wish to speak to it, maybe would.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But so if Councillor Knack, you have questions to the public? Okay.
No, ready to speak to it, Mr. Mayor.
So if you clear this deck, Madam Clerk, and if you go back to the first deck of list of council members to speak on.
We'll have
on
to
the-
have councillors re-sign up to speak.
Yeah, if you don't mind, councillors, please do sign up. The order may change, right, because it was difficult to follow on if you could sign up to speak. Okay. All right, as you sign up, I will start with Councillor Knack.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So appreciate the discussion, but I won't be able to support the referral motion, and I'll offer a little bit why. Prior to the election, I represented the community that West Edmonton Mall is in Summerlee, and have represented a number of communities on the outside edges, again, up until the election with the ward boundary changes. But even with the boundary changes, I still represent some communities on the other side of 178th Street. And there was a comment a bit earlier, and I'd really like to reinforce this point, that there has been actually pretty substantial engagement with the community on this. And I would challenge a point that was mentioned a bit earlier. The communities that are here, and I'm sure Councillor Hamilton, as the current ward councillor, will be able to attest to this. Those communities are not shy. Let me put it that way. They would absolutely be here today if they had substantial concerns. If they felt that what this DC is changing to was actually worse. And I know that very well because when this first came forward, frankly, I don't think there had been a reasonable amount of engagement from the mall. And I would actually argue there wasn't engagement from the mall when this first came forward. And so when that first meeting happened back in 2020, that was really the first time the mall, I think, took more seriously the relationship with the local neighbors and the local communities surrounding them. And then since that point, they have been actively sitting down with those communities that surround West Edmonton Mall, not just Summerlee, but the communities around that place, to talk through this rezoning applications, to talk through good neighbor agreements, to talking through issues that they're dealing with. And so I actually do worry about the idea of not approving something that actually the community has worked on quite substantially. And I would much rather vote on the main motion and then approve the subsequent, which I understand would cover off a lot of what we've been talking about. Because what can be built today, I actually think, in my mind, would be less desirable for the neighbors who have spent the last 2 years working on this. So that's why I can't support the referral. I think everything within the referral motion is something that this council needs to work on, and we should have a conversation about it. And I think a subsequent is more appropriate. But I really encourage folks to recognize the fact that we actually don't have members of the public from any of the surrounding communities here today to ask us to send this back. And that to me is a testament to the work that has occurred from the community in making sure that the mall was working through this. So that's why I can't support the referral motion, and would encourage members of council to not support the referral motion, but absolutely support a subsequent motion that lets us tackle what are very real and important issues. But I think this makes more sense as a subsequent and not as a referral. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Knack. Councillor Hamilton?
I'll be really brief. I can support this referral motion. Councillor Knack highlighted, I think, a lot of the points that are salient, but it's worth reiterating again. If the communities of Summerlee, Thorncliffe, La Pearl, or West Meadowlark had issues, and I've been to community league meetings for 2 out of 4 of those communities in the past week and a half, I truly believe they would have brought it forward, even if they actually fundamentally supported it, but still had outlined concerns. My experience has been that those communities can and do speak up for themselves and speak very eloquently. So I agree also that the work here is important, but I don't agree that this is the burden of the specific applicant, especially because City Council itself has not outlined what any of these terms mean for us in a policy sense. So we would be asking the applicant to undertake work that we ourselves are not clear on and that administration has no guidance on. And there very well may be great subject matter expertise out there, but without setting the policy direction here first, we're sort of setting both administration and the applicant on a fool's errand. So I'm not inclined to support this, but I would support a subsequent motion, and that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hamilton. Councillor Stevenson?
Yeah, thanks very much, and thanks for the conversation. I think it's clear that great work has been done on this application in terms of that engagement with the community, which is really, really fantastic to hear about. I also agree that it's not an ideal circumstance in terms of making decisions in the absence of policy, and agree that the policy piece is what's needed. I think for me, the challenge is that any future policy will be pegged, I think, to what we're permitting today with the proposed DC. And so that's why I think there's just value in taking a moment to reflect and ensure that what is approved sets a precedent that we're potentially more comfortable with. I think the change in development opportunity right now is, again, that the roller coaster wall. I appreciate the points about the size, the 25% of that full face. I still think there's not potential for that to have a significant impact on a broader area, and is potentially, very. It's a difference over the existing development rights in terms of the type of freestanding signs that we're used to seeing, larger signs quite high up. So for those reasons, I support the referral motion and really, really appreciate the conversation today. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stevenson. Councillor Rutherford?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I really wanted to speak to this because I can't support this referral motion, not because the same reasons that were mentioned. I don't support the intent of it. I really was grappling throughout this entire conversation about, what I was vulnerable and stated I was grappling with. But as the conversation progressed, a few things really clarified for me, what is being asked and the parameters that are being set with this DC2 have been in consultation with community and do create parameters that don't currently exist. So I think that for me, while I think that there absolutely needs to be a subsequent, and this has really demonstrated a gap in our policy work, especially as technology continues to advance, I don't think that holding up this business from being able to do their work is fair. That being said, I don't think I can support I can put forward a subsequent and then also support the bylaw. So I will not be supporting the referral. I will not, I will not be supporting the bylaw if this referral doesn't pass. But I know many others will likely support it. So, but I need it on record that I'm not. So I wanted to explain a little bit because it is confusing. But I do understand, the work that this applicant has done, and I thank this applicant for their work with administration, and to try to be a good neighbor. I want to clarify again, I do think that, this is an example of being that good neighbor. I just think, again, we need to be thinking about it more holistically than just the public engagement. Birds can't come and talk at a public hearing about how the light is affecting them, right? So sometimes we need to think beyond just what people have to say. And so I hope my subsequent is supported. And I'm probably out of order because I shouldn't be talking about it yet. But yes, so that is why I unfortunately will not support this referral to support the business, but I will not support the bylaw, so that it's on record that I think that there needs to be policy work. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Councillor Rutherford. Councillor Cartmel.
Thank you. I don't know that I have a lot to add. I will not be supporting this referral, primarily on the basis that, well, a couple of things. One is we're essentially referring it or potentially referring it while we develop policy work, and that's essentially an undefined delay. And I don't see how that's fair to the applicant, particularly when the applicant has gone through the last 2 years to engage the community. And to essentially dismiss that work, as has been mentioned by others, I think would be a real mistake and put the burden all on this one applicant, as opposed to understanding that through the subsequent motion that there's policy work to be done, but not necessarily holding up applications that have been made in good faith while we develop that policy work. There's one other notion I want to speak to here, and that is that we're talking about something relatively local to the mall. We're talking about something that's in the vicinity of the mall. And while there's policy applications that would apply across the city, this particular application is at this location. And the people that know that location the best are the community members and the councillors that represent that ward, both the past councillor and the current councillor. And when those two councillors come to the table and they say that they have got their finger on the pulse of that community, which I firmly believe, and that they say that this referral motion ought not be supported, that the work of the community ought be supported, that this decision ought go through, I think it is worthy of very careful consideration by the balance of council to allow those councillors to represent those wards when they bring their thoughts forward and when they bring their feedback forward. So on that basis, I will not be supporting this referral. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cartmel. Councillor Salvador, if you could take the chair, please.
Yes, I have the chair.
Thank you. And just want to reinforce what Councillor Cartmel and Councillor Knack and Councillor Hamilton mentioned about the engagement with the community and honoring the work of the community working over the last 2 years with the applicant who is their neighbor, right? And I think that is important that we honor their work, and we haven't heard from those community members that if they were not satisfactory with that engagement and the result of that engagement. I absolutely understand the work that needs to be done on night sky, on visibility and protection of the wildlife and the impact of those on the wildlife. Absolutely, we need to do that. So there is a policy gap, and that policy gap would require considerable amount of time to be completed. And I heard probably 18 months to 2 years. Until then, we cannot create conditions where we create more uncertainty for businesses. If businesses apply in goodwill, yes, council have the ultimate authority on these zoning bylaws. Absolutely, I get that. But they've been working on this for 2 years, and with with the understanding that they would not be treated any differently than other businesses probably would have been treated in a similar situation. So I think in this case, trying to implement or trying to develop policy as we work through this and creating complications for a single applicant, I think that is problematic in my mind. Western Winter Mall is one of our largest employers in Edmonton, and they have been good neighbors with those, and they do good work in the community. And if they have development rights that go beyond what is being proposed in this, well, they're coming here so they can modernize those signs and actually reduce some of the impact, and they've been working on that, reducing that impact on the neighborhood, on hospitals and others. I think we need to accept that. I think we can. I understand the desire. Once policy is developed, that policy will apply. But until that policy doesn't exist, I think we need to acknowledge the goodwill that people have put into bringing forward this application. So with that, I will not be supporting this referral. And I will take the chair back.
I'll return the chair.
Thank you. And I don't see Councillor Jans to close. Councillor Jans?
Nope, I'm good.
So we have a motion, so we have a referral motion on the floor. No further questions. Call the vote.
I can't submit my vote,
Yeah, me
so I'm
either.
a no.
Can you?
A lot of the votes just came through, so if everyone can just double check to make sure that they voted appropriately, and we have all the votes.
You got all the votes? We'll see once you display.
Oh, no, I'm good.
So we'll know when you display the votes if we all voted appropriately.
Just in case, because I think
Madam
the
Clerk,
token may expire.
Madam Clerk, can you display the votes, please? There we go. Can council members see they voted appropriately? There we go. Good. All right. Thank you. And now we are back.
Sorry, confirming that is defeated, 2 to 11.
Yeah, oh, sorry. It is defeated, 2 to 11. Okay, now,
I'll move closure of the public hearing.
just hold on, Councillor Stevenson. I'm just trying to click back here. Here we go. I'm back. All right, so just one technical point. Just want to make sure we're doing the right things the right way. We already gave council members the opportunity to ask members of the public questions on new information, right? So we don't have to do that again.
You did, Mr. Mayor, but it was while you were in that realm of referral motion. I think just to be safe, it would be wise to check with council, see if they have any questions on the generic application that's before
Got it.
you.
Okay, so before we close move the closing of the bylaw, I'll ask council if they wish to ask any further questions to those who presented in the response to new information that may have arisen during the public hearing. Councillor Knack, you have questions on new information?
Yes, sir. Mr. Pollock had mentioned earlier that they might have some wording for just aligning that one piece that wasn't made clear, and so I think he had mentioned. Is that correct, Mr. Pollock? You have
to align the restriction of the roller coaster sign?
Yeah, you mentioned you had some wording of that, and I feel we should probably get that on before we close the bylaw.
Yeah, correct, we do. It just specifically outlines that the operational hours are included in the roller coaster sign, so it'd be de-energized at the same time.
So someone would need to move that amendment, right?
Yes, so I'm happy to do that just to make sure that's fully captured in the bylaw we'll be voting on.
Yeah.
So
Thank you, Councillor Knack, for flagging that. Seconded by probably Councillor Hamilton.
I'll second that, yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Hamilton. We have a motion, we have amendment on the floor. Any questions on the amendment? Please call the vote on the amendment.
We're just going to get the wording on the board for you.
Okay. There we go. Can you move it up a bit? So, here we go. The major digital signs, minor digital sign on premises signs, minor digital off signs, and minor digital off premise signs, and eliminated signs abutting or adjacent to residential areas or extended medical treatment services use include any digital sign on the roller coaster wall shall be de-energized between 12 a.m. to 5 a.m. Those are the consistent hours, right? Good. Okay, any questions on the amendment? Seeing none, please vote or call the vote.
We have 13 votes.
Display the votes, please. That is carried. Okay, now the bylaw can be closed, right? Okay. Councillor Hamilton?
I'll move closure of the public hearing.
Second.
Second by Councillor Knack. Any questions? Seeing none, please call the vote.
We have 13 votes.
Display the votes, please. That is carried.
I'll move first reading of Charter Bylaw 19127.
Second.
Moved by Councillor Hamilton, second by Councillor Knack. Anyone to speak? I see no one on the list to speak. Please call the vote.
Sorry, I'm a yes. I guess I hit my 8 hours.
Thank you, Councillor Knack. We have all the votes.
Display the votes, please. That is carried.
I'll move second reading of Bylaw 19127.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Rutherford, second by Councillor Knack. No questions, please vote.
Point of order, Councillor Rutherford didn't move this. I see, well, Councillor Rutherford was shaking her head furiously when you said moved by Councillor Rutherford.
Sorry. I'm just, my mind is, I know why am I confusing Councillor Rutherford and Councillor Hamilton today? Here, I gotta give my head a shake. Here you go. Bring it back in space. Here you go.
It's all baby cameos.
Moved, that's the sad part when we don't see each other here, right? So, moved by Councillor Hamilton and second by Councillor Knack. Here we go. Now please vote. Display, just hold on. Here you go.
Waiting for a few votes. Looking for Councillor Jans and Councillor Salvador.
I'm a no, Madam Clerk. Apologies, it's just resetting.
Thank you, Councillor Salvador. We have all the votes.
Display the votes, please. That is carried.
I'll move consideration of third reading of the bylaw.
Thank you, Councillor Hamilton.
Second.
Second by Councillor Knack. Please, see any questions, please vote.
We have 13 votes.
Display the votes, please. That is carried.
And I'll move third reading of Charter Bylaw 19127.
Second.
Thank you, Councillor Hamilton. Thank you, Councillor Knack, for seconding. Third reading. No questions, please vote.
Just looking for Councillor Stevenson's vote.
Sorry, it didn't come up. I'm a no.
Thank you. We have all the votes.
Display the votes, please. That is carried. Any notices of motion and motion without customary notice?
Point of order, I had a subsequent to that item
Yes.
that I had highlighted.
Yes, Councillor Rutherford, go ahead.
Yes,
Admin, go ahead.
so I think, the city clerk has the subsequent up, that administration returned to Urban Planning Committee with a report outlining an approach and work plan to establish a digital sign policy, including considerations for impacts of light on the night sky, visibility, wildlife, public health, and climate goals, with a due date of September 27th, 2022, Urban Planning Committee.
Second.
Second by Councillor Paquette. Yeah,
Yes, sir.
thank you.
So just to quickly introduce this, we've talked a lot, but again, I think this really demonstrates that there is a void in our policy right now. There's a gap in some policy stuff. And I know this is not a quick process, but definitely something we need to consider. And as I mentioned, I talk about public health in here, and I specifically want to highlight why I mentioned public health, because there's a lot of research that shows that light pollution can actually affect even people's circadian rhythms and lead to increased cases of chronic illnesses. I talk about climate goals because we cannot be talking about digital signs if we're not talking about electricity and energy. And so those are why I added those two, and I thought that context was important to highlight in this. So I really do hope that this would allow for a more comprehensive conversation beyond what the narrow view sometimes of zoning can be on digital signage, and allow some policy direction there going forward. So that's it. I will open it to any questions my colleagues have.
Thank you, Councillor Rutherford. We have council members on the list, and I'll go to Councillor Rice.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have two questions. I'm allowed to ask administration at this time?
Oh, absolutely. You can ask questions to administration or to the mover of the motion.
Okay, so specifically to administration, two questions. First one, I just want to get a better understanding. Is this policy work is part of rezoning bylaw renew work? Or it's separate, is totally separate? So because I don't want to say the overlap work. And from
it is not, Councillor Rice, it is not duplication of work. It is not overlap work. The zoning bylaw would be a tool that we could potentially use to implement any of this policy work, but this is, I can assure you, not duplicative work.
Okay, that's perfect. So the second question is specifically related to wildlife. And so I believe like the many councillors, including myself, heard the coyote and then the issue and in the urban area, and specifically for the safety concerns. How that could link back to our digital signage and with light. And because if we have certain hours that actually impact the safety and in the neighborhood. So I would like to say possibility, and we could separate something specific for the wildlife and for the neighborhood safety concern to address that concern. And instead of only put into the lights or we can add a section there. I know I'm going to detail right now, but that is my intention. I would like to say this policy work, when we consider as a business side and for the signage perspective, how we can also consider the community safety, address that concern as well.
Councillor, if I understand correctly, your question to administration is, could we look at the wildlife impacts on community safety as well?
It's not about as well, it's about how this link back to the digital signage, because we're talking about lights and impact. And then if like certain hours, and we have lots of discussion about the lights and in the neighborhood and in our city, but if we don't have enough lights, and how that impacts the safety and related to the wildlife.
Thank you, Councillor Rice. So you're asking if we could explore the impacts of community or lighting and community safety as a result of digital signs. I think we could look at that as well, but I think it's probably to the mover if that would be a friendly amendment to add into the motion or not.
Yeah, I would. Sorry, I will let you.
Sorry. I wish English is my first language. If I didn't explain very clear, and then feel free to ask.
Yeah, no, I think I understand what you're saying. I think that what you're talking about is really around the environmental design for public safety. And I want to be clear that my motion doesn't touch on like public lighting, so like pathway lighting or park lighting. And so I'm concerned about adding that in here in terms of starting to create too broad, because I wouldn't want digital signs to be used as a safety tool to, like, if we're going to create lighting to mitigate safety, I'm concerned about that being a digital sign versus like a light post. But maybe I'm not understanding. So would you envision, so if they're going away and they're kind of doing this work plan, you would want administration to also explore the use of digital signs to mitigate, like, being able to see wildlife or being able to be safe?
I think that is more attention. I'm not talking about environmental lighting. I'm talking about this digital signage, how we control about the lighting and to impact wildlife and appearance in our neighborhoods and in our society, and then to address.
So you want it, so you want it as a deterrent, like to also explore how digital lights could be a deterrent for unwanted species.
Otherwise, I didn't say the connection why we need to put wildlife here.
So that's a great question. So the wildlife,
the motion,
the wildlife is in there because that we do have urban wildlife. We have birds, we have bees, we have rabbits, coyotes, as you've mentioned, and they're impacted. A lot of them are, even nocturnal. A lot of animals are nocturnal, for example. And so if it's constantly lit, it really impacts them. And so that's why I wanted to look at I was looking at it more from an environmental lens, as opposed to that safety lens that you're thinking of.
Thank you.
If you want to make that amendment, that's fine. I wouldn't consider it friendly, though, I think is
Thank you, Councillor Rice. Can think about that as I go to the other council members. Councillor Wright.
Thank you. I wanted to suggest a friendly amendment, but first I just maybe want to check with Ms. McCabe. I did ask Ms. Liu about the driver distraction from the signage. And she said that it was the Kona Vision study. Is that something that can be looked at in this policy review as well?
Councillor Wright, if that's something council would like us to look at, we have done some work in that space already to inform our current practice.
Okay, but there's nothing, and again, so there's no policy, so there's nothing part of the policy to clearly define that, and nothing in current zoning?
Councillor, within the traffic safety bylaw that it's reviewed under when it comes to development permits, so there is existing regulation that guides the location of digital signs to ensure the safe operation of the intersections.
But if you'd like to look at, if council would like to look at it further, I would suggest that the motion would need to be amended to include that.
Okay. I would like to see that in a specific policy if Councillor Rutherford would allow me to make that amendment to assess the effects of the digital signage on driver distraction.
So, Councillor Wright, the entire body would have to accept whether it's friendly or not.
As a friendly amendment?
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
So I guess, are there any objections?
So where would you say that? Like, where would you add?
So for the impacts of light on the night sky, visibility, wildlife, public health, climate goals, and the effects of digital signage on driver distraction.
Okay. All right, I want to get a sense from council members if that is considered friendly or not.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah.
I think that it's like, for me, it's friendly, but just a quick question to administration if we already actually have that information from previous studies.
We do, Councillor Paquette, and we also have engineering guidelines that we use, such as the Transportation Association of Canada's guidelines. But council would wish for us to look at it further. It should be included.
In that case, it's friendly for me because it doesn't really mean a lot of work.
Okay, anyone object this to be friendly? Seeing none, so it is friendly.
Thank you.
And are you done, Councillor, right now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And, I got a different list now. Is this the list?
This is the correct list. We're just putting up the.
Okay, here we go. Councillor Rice, want to go for second round. Councillor Salvador.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I'll be really quick. I guess to administration, through this body of work, I guess would we be seeing potential for, direction around separation distances that would, limit the effects of light pollution, for example? Like, I'm just trying to get an idea of what we can expect to see out of this. Is that a fair example that could come out of this?
It's a fair example, but this motion is to come back with a work plan that would scope those types of things out. That would say this could be in scope and out of scope and what the potential tools are. So for example, if it includes things like effect on driver distraction, that might mean an update to like the design and construction standards for the city of Edmonton. Whereas, separation distances might be an update to the zoning bylaw renewal. So I think we need some time to be able to figure out what this looks like. And then that's the intent of this motion, would to figure out, to scope what makes sense and come back to you with a work plan associated with that.
Okay, great. That's all for me. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Councillor Salvador. Can you move the second round?
Yes, happy to move the second round.
Seconded by Councillor Knack, or was Councillor Knack?
Yeah,
Okay,
that's right.
Thank you. Any questions on the second round? See none. Please call the vote.
Yes, for me, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Tang.
Yes, for me,
And yes.
Councillor Wright.
Yeah, yes for Councillor Principe as well.
And yes, for Councillor Stevenson.
Thank you, Councillors Principe, Stevenson, and Wright. And we're still just looking for Councillors Cartmel and Jans.
No from Jans.
Thank you, Councillor Jans. Just looking for Councillor Cartmel.
Yes.
Thank you. We have all the votes.
Display the votes, please. That is carried. Okay, I'll go to Councillor Rice.
Thank you, Ms. Chair, and I will try to click. I'm a little bit struggling for the wording here and how to express my points and regarding this subsequent motion. So I'm going to support this motion because I believe that policy work is important for us to have that and in place. So the challenge for me is to look at wildlife, and because we heard so many concerns regarding our community safety and specifically and related to a coyote. But the coyote come to our community and then will be impacted by the lights. And then if we're talking about digital signage, the lights, the impact of lights, but how that impact on the wildlife, and as a result, we can increase the community safety. So I would like to see that type of work and reflect in this policy work, but I don't know how to word in that. And so that's why I expect my colleagues to help me for that wording and to say this meaningful work and in this piece moving forward. So that is why, so I request the second run.
I think that probably be, Ms. McCabe, that probably be implied work that you would do as part of the impact on wildlife. Would you not do that, or would you need additional direction on that?
I think I just need to make sure I understand. I think Councillor Rice, are you asking for the impacts of the light on community safety? Are you saying that we're looking at wildlife, therefore we should also look at community safety?
Specifically the impact of lights on the community safety, and you could, yes, you could say community safety, but right now this community safety, there are many angles, specific angle related to the wildlife.
So if I understand, Councillor Rice, you're saying that if digital light will have an impact on wildlife such as coyotes, right? How does that impact community safety? How would that impact community safety?
Yeah, at a strategic level, yes, impact the community safety, but specifically, I believe the digital signage lights will impact the wildlife and then on the coyote as well. And for them, like for instance, they come to our community.
Yeah.
And I just have no word and then how to describe this.
Yeah, I think I understand. If I understand, is that, you know, if digital lights have impact on coyotes and the wildlife, and they, in case of coyotes, they come into the community, and how that impacts community safety. Like if they're, that's what so I know would that needs to be, would you, Ms. McCabe, would you include that in the analysis, or do you need a specific wording in the motion to tackle that?
Mr. Mayor, I don't think we need specific wording on that motion. Thank you for helping with that understanding. I think we could take a look at that as a result, and there is a wildlife guidelines as well, through, the wildlife bylaw, through community standards and park rangers. But.
Would that be fine, Councillor Rice?
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Good.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Rice. Really appreciate that. And Councillor Hamilton?
No questions. I was just going to support what Ms. McCabe said. I think we've all heard concerns about the urban coyote challenges, and we did some work on that a couple of years ago. So, Councillor Rice, it might be more helpful to connect through the chair. It might be more helpful to connect her with the community standards folks, because they even do community safety workshops, and we'll come out to communities and talk about how to prevent sort of these unwanted interactions with wildlife. So that would be my suggestion.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Hamilton. Okay. Any more? I don't see no more questions on the subsequent motion. Please call the vote. Oh, sorry, Councillor, just hold on before we do that. Councillor Rutherford, you want to close? Yes.
No, I think we've covered everything.
You did, okay.
I'm looking forward to I guess I would close with look forward to and would appreciate your support on this motion
Thank
to my
you.
colleagues. Thank you.
Councillor Rutherford, please vote.
Just looking for Councillor Tang's vote.
Yes, for me, Madam Clerk.
Thank you. We have 13 votes.
Display the votes, please. That is carried. Okay, anything else, council members? Before I call for adjournment? We are adjourned. Thank you so much, everyone, and see you tomorrow.